Ever notice how the smartest people still make the dumbest decisions when emotions get involved? It is wild, right? You can know something is bad for you. You can see the red flags waving right in front of your face. But the second your feelings light up, logic shuts down like a dying battery. That is not a flaw in your personality. It is a built-in feature of the human brain. And corporations have learned how to push that button better than anyone else on Earth. Before we continue, a quick note. Many of you watch our videos but haven't subscribed yet, so please subscribe to our channel Restwise and join our growing community. We'd also love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's amazing to see how connected we all are. If you enjoy relaxing with philosophy, psychology, and science while drifting into sleep, give this video a like and stay with us on the journey. Now, let's get back to the video. Think about this for a second. You walk into a store planning to buy toothpaste. That is it. But the moment you step in, music hits you just right, lights make the product sparkle, colors pull your attention, and suddenly you are walking out with a basket full of stuff you never meant to buy. That is not coincidence. That is emotional architecture. Every brand in that store is fighting for one thing, not your reason, but your reaction. Because reactions move money faster than reason ever will. There is a simple truth behind almost every form of manipulation. Humans do not act logically. We act emotionally and then justify it logically after the fact. Our brains are storytellers. The emotional part fires first, milliseconds before the rational part even wakes up. So by the time logic steps in, emotion has already chosen the direction. Logic just writes the excuse. Corporations understand this better than most psychologists. They know that fear, desire, pride, guilt, and belonging are the 5 main strings that play the human mind. They use fear to make you feel unsafe without their product. Desire to make you crave what others seem to have. Pride to make you believe buying their brand makes you better. Guilt to make you spend to feel like a good person. And belonging. That is the strongest one. To make you feel like if you do not join in, you are out of the tribe. Think about the last time a commercial hit you emotionally. Maybe it showed a family laughing around a dinner table, or a kid opening a gift with tears in their eyes, or someone achieving their dream after buying a car or a sneaker or a piece of tech. That is not about the product. That is about the feeling the product is tied to. They do not sell you the thing. They sell you the emotional state that thing promises to deliver. And your brain does not separate the two. Once emotion fuses with an object, the logic behind it no longer matters. This is why people get addicted to brands. A logo becomes a symbol of identity. It represents status, memory, safety, or even rebellion. That is how manipulation works. By linking emotion to meaning. When Apple launched its first iPhone, people lined up overnight not because they needed a phone. They could have bought any phone. They did it because it felt like being part of the future. That feeling, not the product, was the sale. Now here is the part most people do not realize: emotional triggers are not random. They are engineered. Companies spend millions on neuroscience and behavioral research to learn what colors make you hungry, what sounds make you trust, what words make you act. Blue is calm, so banks use it to make you feel safe. Red is urgent, so fast food chains use it to make you hungry and impulsive. That little notification sound on your phone, that is a Pavlovian bell. It spikes dopamine every time it rings, training your brain to crave the next hit of attention. You think you are choosing to check your phone, You are not. You are responding to a micro dose of emotional conditioning. And here is the crazy part. Once your emotions are hooked, logic becomes a servant. It starts building stories to defend the emotional choice you already made. You will tell yourself you bought the expensive shoes because they last longer, not because they make you feel powerful. You will say you upgraded your phone because it is faster, not because you did not want to feel left behind. But deep down, it was emotion steering the ship the entire time. If you want to see this in its purest form, look at political marketing. Every side claims to be logical, but campaigns do not sell policies, they sell feelings. Fear of loss, anger at injustice, pride in identity. That is why you can show someone solid evidence, and it changes nothing. Logic is powerless against an emotional anchor. Once someone's feelings are tied to a belief, facts just bounce off like bullets hitting armor. Corporations use the same strategy in softer ways. A commercial might whisper safety, comfort, or status instead of shouting fear. But the mechanism is identical. The emotional center of your brain, the limbic system, makes the call. The logical neocortex just provides reasons that sound smart enough to live with. So here is the uncomfortable truth: emotional triggers are the remote control of human behavior. Every ad, every headline, every color, every sound, it all aims to bypass your thinking brain and plug directly into your feeling brain. Once they hit that switch, they can guide you anywhere they want. To buy, to click, to crave, to obey. But awareness is power. When you start recognizing that little spark, that rush of emotion before a decision, you begin to see the strings being pulled. You pause. You breathe. You ask, is this me wanting this, or is it them making me want it? That 1 second of awareness can break the entire manipulation cycle. Because once emotion stops running the show, logic finally gets a chance to speak. And that is the one thing the system never wants: a human who feels deeply, but chooses consciously. The law of identity attachment. You ever notice how some people do not just buy a brand, they become it? They do not just wear Nike, they are Nike. They do not just use Apple, they live Apple. They defend it like family, argue about it online like it is politics, and feel personally attacked if someone criticizes it. That is not brand loyalty. That is identity attachment. And once a company gets inside your sense of self, control is complete. See, identity is sacred to the human mind. It is how we define who we are, where we belong, and what we stand for. The brain protects identity like a fortress, and anything tied to it automatically feels true, safe, and right. When a brand manages to fuse itself with that identity, logic no longer applies. You stop making decisions as a consumer and start acting as a believer. You are not buying things anymore. You are expressing who you are. This is where corporations play their deepest psychological game. They do not just sell products. They sell stories about you. They say, this is who you are if you buy from us. You are smart if you drive this car. You are creative if you use this laptop. You are strong if you wear these shoes. You are different, powerful, important. It sounds innocent at first, but that emotional narrative burrows into your self-image until your brain starts protecting it as part of your own identity. And that is when the manipulation becomes invisible. Because you are not defending a company anymore. You are defending yourself. It starts small. A slogan that resonates, a community that feels welcoming, a logo that feels like a badge of belonging. Then it builds. You start finding people who use the same brand, and suddenly there is this unspoken bond. A tribe, Apple users against Android users, gamers loyal to one console, even coffee drinkers who swear one brand is the only real one. Every argument, every meme, every tiny online war just reinforces that invisible line between us and them. And the stronger that line gets, the harder it becomes to think objectively about what you are actually supporting. Psychologists call this identity fusion. It is the process where personal identity merges with a group or symbol until they become one and the same. Once that happens, your emotional brain treats an attack on that group as an attack on you. That is why people feel real anger when their favorite brand gets criticized. It activates the same neural pathways that light up when someone insults your family. To your subconscious, it is family. Corporations love this. It means they no longer need to convince you to buy. You will do it automatically, out of loyalty, out of pride, out of fear of not fitting in. You will even rationalize bad behavior from the brand, because admitting it feels like betraying yourself. When a company gets caught lying or mistreating people, identity-attached consumers are the first to say it is complicated, or it is not that bad, or others do worse. That is not logic speaking. That is ego defense. Think of sports fans. A person can spend hundreds on tickets, jerseys, even tattoos of a team that will never know their name. Why? Because being part of that symbol fills a psychological need. The need to belong, to matter, to connect. Corporations use that same wiring, but hide it under lifestyle branding. You do not just buy sneakers, you join a movement. You do not just drink an energy drink, you become part of a fearless tribe. Every purchase becomes a declaration of who you are. And once identity is tied to consumption, your behavior can be steered almost effortlessly. Look at how tech companies have mastered this. When you see people lining up overnight for a product they have never even touched, that is not about specs or features. That is about validation. The product becomes a mirror, proof of taste, success, and belonging. The act of buying itself becomes emotional fuel, and corporations keep that loop alive by constantly reminding you that your choices define you. The message is never "this is useful." It is always "this is you." The scary part: when identity is built on external symbols, control shifts away from the individual. Your mood depends on what the brand does. Your confidence depends on owning the newest version. Your belonging depends on staying inside the ecosystem. That is how corporations quietly own emotional real estate inside your mind. They do not need to command you. They just nudge your identity and you move yourself. Breaking out of it takes brutal honesty. You have to ask, who am I without this label? Without this logo? Without this belonging? That question feels uncomfortable because it shakes the foundation that marketing has been reinforcing for years. But once you see it, you realize how much of your self was actually designed for you. Identity attachment is the highest level of manipulation because it is not about changing your behavior. It is about shaping who you believe you are. Once that happens, control no longer needs force. It becomes voluntary. You carry it proudly, defend it passionately, and never notice the invisible strings guiding your choices. And that is the brilliance of it. The most powerful form of control is the one that feels like freedom. The law of identity attachment. You ever notice how some people do not just buy a brand, they become it? They do not just wear Nike, they are Nike. They do not just use Apple, they live Apple. They defend it like family, argue about it online like it is politics, and feel personally attacked if someone criticizes it. That is not brand loyalty. That is identity attachment. And once a company gets inside your sense of self, control is complete. See, identity is sacred to the human mind. It is how we define who we are, where we belong, and what we stand for. The brain protects identity like a fortress, and anything tied to it automatically feels true, safe, and right. When a brand manages to fuse itself with that identity, logic no longer applies. You stop making decisions as a consumer and start acting as a believer. You are not buying things anymore. You are expressing who you are. This is where corporations play their deepest psychological game. They do not just sell products. They sell stories about you. They say this is who you are if you buy from us. You are smart if you drive this car. You are creative if you use this laptop. You are strong if you wear these shoes. You are different, powerful, important. It sounds innocent at first, but that emotional narrative burrows into your self-image until your brain starts protecting it as part of your own identity. And that is when the manipulation becomes invisible. Because you are not defending a company anymore. You are defending yourself. It starts small. A slogan that resonates, a community that feels welcoming, a logo that feels like a badge of belonging. Then it builds. You start finding people who use the same brand, and suddenly there is this unspoken bond. A tribe, Apple users against Android users, gamers loyal to one console, even coffee drinkers who swear one brand is the only real one. Every argument, every meme, every tiny online war just reinforces that invisible line between us and them. And the stronger that line gets, the harder it becomes to think objectively about what you are actually supporting. Psychologists call this identity fusion. It is the process where personal identity merges with a group or symbol until they become one and the same. Once that happens, your emotional brain treats an attack on that group as an attack on you. That is why people feel real anger when their favorite brand gets criticized. It activates the same neural pathways that light up when someone insults your family. To your subconscious, it is family. Corporations love this. It means they no longer need to convince you to buy. You will do it automatically, out of loyalty, out of pride, out of fear of not fitting in. You will even rationalize bad behavior from the brand, because admitting it feels like betraying yourself. When a company gets caught lying or mistreating people, identity-attached consumers are the first to say it is complicated, or it is not that bad, or others do worse. That is not logic speaking. That is ego defense. Think of sports fans. A person can spend hundreds on tickets, jerseys, even tattoos of a team that will never know their name. Why? Because being part of that symbol fills a psychological need. The need to belong, to matter, to connect. Corporations use that same wiring, but hide it under lifestyle branding. You do not just buy sneakers, you join a movement. You do not just drink an energy drink, you become part of a fearless tribe. Every purchase becomes a declaration of who you are. And once identity is tied to consumption, your behavior can be steered almost effortlessly. Look at how tech companies have mastered this. When you see people lining up overnight for a product they have never even touched, that is not about specs or features. That is about validation. The product becomes a mirror, proof of taste, success, and belonging. The act of buying itself becomes emotional fuel, and corporations keep that loop alive by constantly reminding you that your choices define you. The message is never "this is useful." It is always "this is you." The scary part, when identity is built on external symbols, control shifts away from the individual. Your mood depends on what the brand does. Your confidence depends on owning the newest version. Your belonging depends on staying inside the ecosystem. That is how corporations quietly own emotional real estate inside your mind. They do not need to command you. They just nudge your identity and you move yourself. Breaking out of it takes brutal honesty. You have to ask, who am I without this label? Without this logo? Without this belonging? That question feels uncomfortable because it shakes the foundation that marketing has been reinforcing for years. But once you see it, you realize how much of your self was actually designed for you. Identity attachment is the highest level of manipulation because it is not about changing your behavior. It is about shaping who you believe you are. Once that happens, control no longer needs force. It becomes voluntary. You carry it proudly, defend it passionately, and never notice the invisible strings guiding your choices. And that is the brilliance of it. The most powerful form of control is the one that feels like freedom. The law of perceived choice. Ever get that feeling like you're free, like you're calling the shots? But deep down, something about it feels off. You scroll through a menu of 100 shows, 1,000 products, endless content, and you think, I've got options. I'm in control. But that's exactly what they want you to believe. The law of perceived choice isn't about taking your freedom away. It's about making you believe you still have it while every path quietly leads to the same destination. Here's how it works. The human brain loves choice. It's wired to associate options with power. When we choose, we feel alive, we feel independent, we feel smart. But the catch is, we don't actually analyze where those options come from, or who designed them. We just pick from what's in front of us, trusting that if there are multiple options, there must be freedom. That's the illusion. Corporations know that real control doesn't come from limiting your choices. It comes from shaping them. They don't tell you what to buy. They make you want to buy. And then they hand you a curated list that looks like free will. You think you're choosing between brands, but both belong to the same parent company. You think you're choosing between platforms, but they're owned by the same conglomerate. The freedom feels real, but the outcome never changes. The money flows to the same place. It's the same tactic casinos use. They let you win just enough to feel in control. Every roll, every spin, every near miss. It's designed to keep your dopamine on a leash. You keep playing because it feels like you are making the decisions. But the system already knows the result. The illusion of agency keeps you obedient longer than any threat ever could. Now zoom out and look at everyday life. You go to a grocery store. You see 20 types of cereal, 30 types of chips, countless drinks lined up like an army of individuality. But if you trace the ownership tree, most of them belong to the same handful of corporations. That's not variety. That's vertical integration disguised as freedom. They've learned that people rebel against control, but they don't rebel against choice. So they hide control inside abundance. Psychologically, perceived choice activates the same reward circuits as actual autonomy. Studies show that when people believe they're making a choice, even a meaningless one, their stress drops, their compliance rises, and their satisfaction increases. That's why companies will ask you things like, would you like to sign up for the premium plan or the standard plan? They don't ask, do you want to sign up at all? Because the question itself assumes consent. By giving you a choice between two preselected outcomes, they make refusal feel unnatural. This tactic goes beyond products. It's in algorithms, in politics, in entertainment. The streaming platforms that recommend your next show are not suggesting things randomly. They're guiding your behavior. Not forcing it, but nudging it so subtly that you think it was your idea. The social media feed works the same way. Every scroll feels like exploration, but it's actually a map designed to lead you exactly where they want your attention and your data to go. The brilliance of perceived choice is that it removes resistance. Nobody fights what they believe they chose. Think about how marketing frames things. You don't get sold a lifestyle. You choose it. You don't get told what to wear. You express yourself. The language itself is part of the illusion. It replaces control with empowerment, while the system quietly controls the options that define what empowerment even means. And here's where it gets deep. When your identity is built around choices you didn't actually make, your sense of freedom becomes a performance. You defend it. You show it off. You convince yourself you're independent because you picked your car, your phone, your brand. But what if every one of those choices was designed to funnel you into the same outcome? Dependence, consumption, and predictability. The modern world doesn't need to chain you. It just needs to keep you predictable. That's the psychological trick. Real freedom is chaotic. It's unpredictable. It breaks systems. But perceived freedom, that's clean, controllable, and profitable. They give you infinite playlists, endless products, countless news outlets, all echoing the same narratives, all owned by the same corporate web. It feels like choice, but it's really choreography. Even rebellion gets commodified. You think you're going against the grain by buying the edgy brand, the rebellious logo, the anti-system design. But the system owns that too. They've learned to sell defiance as another flavor of obedience. You can choose to fit in, or you can choose to stand out. Either way, you're choosing from their menu. That's why the illusion works so well. It flatters you. It tells your ego that you're free, that you're unique, that your decisions matter. And the more you believe it, the tighter the loop becomes. Because if you feel free, you stop questioning who built the walls around your freedom in the first place. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start noticing the patterns, how the choices in your feed, your store, your entertainment, even your politics, all point toward the same few interests. You realize that the power was never in the number of options, but in who creates them. The moment you step back and ask, why are these my only choices? That's when the illusion cracks. The law of perceived choice isn't just about manipulation. It's about maintenance. True control doesn't need force. It just needs your quiet participation. And nothing keeps you more obedient than believing you're already free. The law of algorithmic nudging. You ever wonder why you see what you see online? Why one video pops up instead of another? Why one post hits your feed right when you were thinking about it? Or why your For You page feels like it knows you better than your friends do? That is not luck, and it is not magic. That is the law of algorithmic nudging, the invisible steering of the digital age, the modern lever of behavior. Let's get something straight. Algorithms do not just predict what you like. They create what you like. They don't follow your behavior, they train it. Every click, scroll, pause, every half second of your attention becomes data that tells the system who you are, what triggers you, and how to keep you hooked. You think you are just browsing, but the system is mapping your psychology in real time, learning exactly what makes you stay, what makes you angry, What makes you want more? Here is the chilling part. Once it knows, it starts to nudge. Not shove, not force. Just nudge. The tiniest suggestion at the right moment. The post that appears just when your guard is down. The video that fuels your curiosity or outrage. The headline that feels like it was written for you. These nudges are invisible, but they shape your thoughts, your mood, even your worldview, one micro decision at a time. This isn't science fiction. It is behavioral design backed by billions of data points. The core principle comes from a field called choice architecture. It says that you can change human behavior simply by changing the way choices are presented. You do not remove options. You just arrange them strategically, like placing the healthy food at eye level in a cafeteria so people pick it more often. Online, that cafeteria is infinite, and you are walking through it every second. The algorithm's job is simple: keep you engaged. But engaged doesn't mean happy, or informed, or fulfilled. It means active. It means eyes on screen, emotion stimulated, dopamine dripping. The system doesn't care if you are enraged, inspired, or addicted, as long as you do not leave. And to achieve that, it will study you like a lab rat, testing every variable until it finds what works. You might think, I can outsmart it. I'll choose what I want to see. But the algorithm already anticipates that rebellion. It gives you just enough control to make you feel autonomous. You get to click not interested, block an ad, switch platforms. But all those actions become new data points. The system learns from your resistance too. Every defiance refines the model. Every no helps it find the next, smarter yes. Now here's where it gets even deeper. The algorithm does not just adapt to you. It adapts society. It notices what spreads fastest, what divides people, what sparks engagement, and it amplifies that. Not out of malice, but out of math. Rage travels faster than reason. Conflict keeps people talking longer than calm. So the digital ecosystem gradually tilts toward the extreme. More outrage, more polarization, more echo chambers. Because those are the conditions where human attention burns brightest. That is algorithmic nudging at scale. Not a single puppet master pulling strings, but a feedback loop of human behavior and machine optimization. We feed it emotions, it feeds us more of what provokes them. Over time, it quietly reshapes our opinions, our fears, our habits, not by forcing us to think a certain way, but by surrounding us with information that makes one way feel inevitable. You've probably felt it before, that eerie sense that your phone is reading your mind. You talk about something, and suddenly ads appear for it. The truth is, it does not have to listen to you. It already knows the pattern. Your demographic, your location, your browsing habits, your social circles. All of it builds a predictive model that can guess your next interest with frightening accuracy. It does not need to hear your words when it already speaks your behavior. Corporations and platforms use this power with precision. They know that steering attention is steering emotion, and steering emotion is steering action. Whether it's keeping you scrolling, buying, voting, or believing, a few well-timed nudges can change everything without you ever realizing it happened. That is why algorithmic manipulation is the perfect form of control: invisible, efficient, and self-reinforcing. The scary part: it feels natural. It feels like reality. Because the more the system learns about you, the more the digital world shapes itself to fit your tastes. Your feed becomes a mirror, but not a reflection of who you are, a reflection of what keeps you watching. Slowly, the mirror becomes a cage, padded with comfort and familiarity. You stop seeing the world as it is and start seeing it as the algorithm predicts you want it to be. That's the ultimate trick. The algorithm doesn't hide the truth. It buries it under relevance. It knows that if it gives you what feels right, what feels you won't question it. You'll scroll, react, consume, repeat. You'll live inside a loop designed to look like freedom. But once you notice the pattern, something shifts. You start catching the nudges. You start asking, why am I seeing this now? And that tiny moment of awareness, that half-second pause, is power, because awareness breaks automation. Algorithmic nudging is the modern lever of behavior. It doesn't control through authority, it controls through attention. And in a world where attention equals influence, the ones who understand how to steer it quietly shape the destiny of everyone else. The law of social proof. Ever notice how your confidence in something shoots up the second you see other people doing it? You can walk past an empty restaurant and feel unsure, but if there's a line out the door, suddenly it looks like the best spot in town. That's not logic. That's social proof, one of the oldest, strongest psychological forces in human behavior. The law is simple: people conform to what others seem to accept, and corporations have weaponized that instinct down to a science. The human brain is wired for imitation. It's how we survived before we could even speak. If everyone ran from the bushes, you ran too, because the one who stopped to think usually got eaten. That instinct never left us. It just evolved. Now, instead of tigers in the bushes, we're running toward trends, products, and opinions, all because we see other people doing the same. Conformity feels safe. It's the brain's shortcut for decision making in a confusing world. Corporations know this, and they build entire marketing empires around it. Think about how often you hear phrases like best-selling, most popular, trending now, number one choice, everyone's switching to this brand. None of those are just descriptions. They're cues. They tell your brain, this is what other people have already chosen. And once you believe that, resistance fades. You don't question if it's right. You just assume the crowd must know something you don't. This is why reviews matter more than ads. Why influencers matter more than experts. We don't trust authority the way we used to. We trust each other, or at least, what looks like each other. When you see thousands of people liking a post, buying a product, leaving 5-star reviews, or following a trend, your subconscious reads it as validation. The logic goes, if that many people like it, it must be good. It's emotional safety disguised as logic. And that's the key, seem to accept. It doesn't even have to be real. Companies have learned that perceived popularity triggers the same psychological effect as actual popularity. Fake reviews, inflated follower counts, bots pretending to be fans. It all plays on the same primal reflex. Your brain doesn't verify the data. It just reacts. If it looks like consensus, it feels like truth. One of the most powerful demonstrations of this came from a simple psychology experiment in the 1950s. A man named Solomon Asch showed that if a group of people deliberately gave the wrong answer to an obvious question, most individuals would eventually agree with the group, even though they knew it was wrong. They didn't want to stand out. The pain of isolation was stronger than the pull of accuracy. Corporations took that lesson and built it into the modern internet. Every like button, every view counter, every trending tag. It's all built on Asch's insight. You're not just seeing content, you're seeing how everyone else reacted to it. Those numbers are signals that shape your perception, before you even decide for yourself. You'll click what's popular because it feels validated. You'll share what's approved because it feels safe. You'll hesitate to go against the grain because being different now comes with social risk. Influencer marketing is social proof in its most evolved form. These people aren't just selling products, they're selling social acceptance. When you see someone you admire wearing a brand, driving a car, or using a product, your brain associates it with belonging. You want to be part of that circle, not consciously, but instinctively. The line between "I like this" and "I want to be like them" disappears. And the more connected the world becomes, the stronger the effect gets. In the past, you might have compared yourself to your neighbors or coworkers. Now you're comparing yourself to millions of people online, most of them performing a version of life that isn't even real. The result is constant psychological pressure to match what looks normal, even if that normal is fake. Corporations exploit this beautifully. They don't need to convince you directly. They just show you a crowd and let your instincts do the rest. They'll plant a few seed influencers, fake some early buzz, manufacture scarcity, and suddenly the product looks like it's everywhere. You feel like you're late, like you're missing out. That fear of being left behind, that quiet anxiety of not belonging, pushes you to act. You buy the thing not because you need it, but because not having it makes you feel out of sync. That's social proof. It doesn't just guide behavior, it defines it. It's not about logic or need. It's about harmony with the perceived majority. The dangerous part is how invisible it feels. You think you're making independent choices, but every choice is happening in a psychological ecosystem designed to make you conform. You think you discovered a product, but the discovery was scripted. The timing, the reviews, the endorsements, all engineered to feel organic. And once everyone's following the same signals, it doesn't even matter if the original proof was fake. It becomes real through repetition. But here's the truth no corporation wants you to realize: social proof only works when you look outward for certainty. The moment you look inward, when you pause and ask, "Do I actually want this, or do I just want to fit in?" the illusion starts to break. You stop following, and you start choosing. Social proof is powerful because it hides inside trust. It turns belonging into obedience. And as long as people keep chasing acceptance over awareness, corporations won't need to control anyone directly. They'll just control the crowd and let the crowd control you. The Law of Surveillance Capitalism. You know that feeling when you talk about something random, like hiking boots or air purifiers, and then suddenly ads for them follow you everywhere. It feels creepy, like your phone is listening. But that's not the real story. What's actually happening is far deeper, far more calculated. It's the Law of Surveillance Capitalism. The process of turning your every move, thought, and impulse into an economic resource. Here's the unsettling truth. You're not the customer anymore. You're the product. Every digital interaction you make, every scroll, tap, search, or hesitation is quietly recorded, analyzed, and sold. But they don't just want your data. They want your predictability. Because once your behavior can be predicted, it can be controlled. And once it can be controlled, it can be monetized forever. It all started with a simple business realization: data about human behavior was more valuable than the product itself. Google discovered this first. At the beginning, it just wanted to improve searches. But when it noticed that behavioral data could be used to predict which ads people would click, a new kind of capitalism was born. One that didn't sell goods or services, but behavioral futures. The idea was simple but terrifying. Whoever knows what people are likely to do next can shape what they actually do next. Think about that. Every digital platform today operates under the same logic. Social media doesn't make money from your posts. It profits from your patterns, your attention, your reactions, your emotions. They're all fuel for an invisible economy. You're not just giving away privacy, you're giving away power. Because when a corporation owns your digital behavior, it owns your decision-making environment. And here's where it gets darker. Surveillance capitalism doesn't just observe your behavior, it modifies it. The system watches how long you hover over a post, what words make you pause, what emotions make you click. Then it rearranges the digital world around you, the ads, the headlines, even the order of your feed, to gently steer you toward what benefits the system most. You think you're exploring the internet, but the internet is exploring you. The data doesn't stop at what you do online either. Smart devices, GPS trackers, fitness watches, digital assistants, they're all part of the same ecosystem. Every step, heartbeat, purchase, and voice command becomes another data point. Each one adds another layer to your behavioral profile, refining the map of who you are and how to influence you. The more data they have, the less freedom you actually possess, because the system can now anticipate your next move better than you can. You might think it's just ads. Who cares? But it's not just ads anymore. It's politics. It's news. It's culture. It's reality itself being filtered through algorithms built to manipulate what you see and how you feel. That's why two people can live in the same world, but experience completely different realities online. Each feed is customized to maximize engagement, even if that means distorting truth. That's not an accident. That's design. The brilliance of surveillance capitalism is how invisible it feels. It doesn't force you to comply, it seduces you with convenience. You trade privacy for ease without thinking twice. You give your face to unlock your phone. You let your voice assistant record you to play music faster. You let apps track your location to save a few seconds finding directions. But every one of those conveniences feeds the same machine. You're building the cage as you enjoy its comfort. The system works because it speaks the language of human weakness. It knows that people crave validation, novelty, belonging. So it builds platforms that deliver micro rewards, likes, comments, recommendations, all designed to keep you scrolling, sharing, spending. Every time you interact, the machine grows smarter, more persuasive, more intimate. It doesn't need to guess who you are anymore. It knows. And once that data is harvested, it doesn't stay put. It's traded, merged, and sold across an enormous web of companies you've never heard of. Data brokers package your digital fingerprint into predictive models. How likely you are to buy, vote, move, marry, or break down. Entire industries exist to auction those probabilities in milliseconds to whoever can profit from them. You are being commodified in real time, not as a person, but as a pattern. What makes this law so dangerous is that it turns the essence of being human, curiosity, emotion, behavior, into raw material. It transforms your private life into an open market, and because it happens behind the screen, it feels harmless. But this is the purest form of control that feels like choice. Control that feels like personalization. control that doesn't demand obedience because it already has your participation. The irony is, we built this system ourselves. We fed it willingly every time we clicked, accept all cookies, every time we scrolled without reading the terms, every time we said yes to convenience over consciousness. The world we now live in, where privacy is a myth and manipulation is automated, is the natural evolution of those tiny decisions. But awareness still matters. Once you understand how the system operates, you start seeing through its disguises. You start noticing how every free service has a cost, how every personalized experience is really a test to learn your triggers. You start reclaiming your digital space, turning off permissions, setting boundaries, questioning what you give away. The law of surveillance capitalism isn't just about data. It's about dominance. The quiet transformation of human experience into corporate property. And the moment we stop treating that as normal is the moment the system begins to lose its power. Because you can't be controlled by a machine that depends on your blindness once you finally start to see. The law of reward and punishment. You ever wonder why some apps make you feel a tiny rush when you get a notification, but a small sting when you miss one? Why your boss dangles a bonus to keep you pushing harder? Or why a brand makes you feel left out when you skip a purchase? That's not just marketing. That's the law of reward and punishment. The ancient mechanism of control that turns free will into predictable behavior, conditioning through incentives and fear. This law is as old as humanity itself. Every animal, including us, learns through feedback. Touch fire, feel pain. Don't do that again. Do something right, get food or praise. Repeat it. Simple. But corporations and systems today have turned that primal loop into a science. They've built digital cages made not of bars, but of dopamine and anxiety. The modern world doesn't command you to behave. It trains you to behave. Let's start with reward. Every time you open your phone and see a red bubble, a like, a message, a win, your brain releases dopamine, the chemical of anticipation and pleasure. That's not coincidence. That's design. Every sound, color, vibration, all of it calibrated to reward your attention. Not too much, not too little. Just enough to keep you chasing the next hit. Psychologists call it variable reward scheduling, the same principle used in slot machines. You don't win every time, which makes you crave the next spin even more. It's not consistent rewards that hook you. It's unpredictable ones. Corporations learned that unpredictability is the ultimate leash. When you never know exactly when the reward will come, you stay engaged longer, more desperate, more loyal. Social media runs on this. You refresh your feed because maybe the next post will make you laugh. Maybe the next notification will make you feel seen. You are not chasing content. You are chasing the possibility of emotional payoff. But reward is only half the formula. The other half, the darker half, is punishment. Fear is the twin engine of motivation. Fear of loss, fear of missing out, fear of exclusion, fear of being wrong. Corporations and institutions exploit that fear to keep you obedient. A missed deadline means a penalty. A lower credit score means no loan. A subscription lapses and suddenly you lose access, your playlists, your data, your status. The system teaches you to avoid pain by complying faster, paying more, clicking without question. Even in social spaces, punishment takes subtle forms. You post something and it gets ignored. That's social pain. Your brain registers it the same way it registers physical injury, so you adapt. You start posting what gets likes, saying what gets approval, being who the algorithm rewards. You are not being censored. You are being conditioned. The reward trains you to repeat. The silence trains you to stop. Think about how jobs operate. Companies don't need to threaten anymore. They just structure incentives so tightly that fear does the work for them. You work harder for the bonus because not getting it feels like loss. You stay late because recognition feels like reward. It's not that you're forced. It's that you've been trained to crave approval and dread rejection. The carrot and the stick live inside your own nervous system now. This law runs deeper than economics. It shapes our identities. Every social platform is built around status metrics: followers, likes, badges, achievements, small digital tokens of worth. Each one lights up the reward center in your brain. Each one whispers, "You matter." And once that feedback loop starts, the system no longer needs to control you externally. You'll do the work yourself. You'll chase validation without realizing the leash is in your own hand. And when the reward stops coming, you panic, you refresh, you post more, you buy more, you do whatever it takes to feel that little spark again. The fear of being unseen or irrelevant drives more engagement than joy ever could. That's why platforms deliberately limit your reach sometimes. Not to punish you directly, but to make you fight to earn your place back. Every dip in attention reignites the chase. Every small win feels like relief. You're not addicted to pleasure. You're addicted to escaping discomfort. The most brilliant part of this system is how invisible it feels. Nobody tells you to behave. Nobody forces you to comply. The incentives do all the talking. A discount here, a notification there, a streak counter reminding you not to break your habit. You think you're winning a game, but the game was built to make you play indefinitely. The psychology behind it traces back to B.F. Skinner's experiments with rats and pigeons. He discovered that behavior could be shaped through consistent reinforcement. Give a food pellet for pressing a lever, and the animal learns. Take it away, and the animal presses frantically, desperate to understand why the reward vanished. That desperation is the exact energy corporations harvest today. Every metric, every badge, every exclusive offer is a pellet in a digital cage, and you press the lever willingly. But here's the truth no system can hide: the moment you see the pattern, you start breaking it. You start noticing when the rush hits, when the anxiety creeps in, when a platform is training your reflexes instead of serving your needs. Awareness severs the loop. The next time you feel that pull, that urge to check, to buy, to react, stop and ask, who benefits if I do? The law of reward and punishment is the most primal of all control systems because it doesn't demand your submission. It earns it. It uses your biology against you, but the mind that recognizes its conditioning has already begun to outgrow it, because the real freedom isn't found in chasing rewards or avoiding pain. It's in refusing to let either one define how you live. The law of normalization. You ever stop and think about how quickly something strange starts to feel normal? Like the first time your phone asked for your fingerprint, or when cameras showed up on every corner, or when every app suddenly wanted access to your microphone. At first it felt invasive. Now it barely registers. That's not accidental. That's the law of normalization. The process of turning control systems into background noise until people stop questioning and start accepting. The trick isn't to hide control, it's to make it feel ordinary. Here's how it happens. Step 1: introduce something shocking. A policy, a technology, a rule that makes people uneasy. Step 2. Justify it. Tell them it's for safety, convenience, efficiency. Step 3. Repeat it until it fades from awareness. What once felt like intrusion becomes infrastructure. What once felt like a violation becomes daily life. It's the slow erosion of outrage through repetition. The brain is built for adaptation. Psychologists call it habituation, the tendency to stop noticing things that stay constant. That's how we survive chaos. You tune out the hum of a refrigerator, the buzz of city traffic, the constant stream of notifications. The system counts on that. Because if you can get people to live alongside control long enough, it stops feeling like control. It becomes just the way things are. Corporations and governments mastered this law through patience. They know that humans resist sudden change but accept gradual ones, so they roll out control in doses. First, a little tracking for convenience. Then a little monitoring for safety. Then a little data collection for personalization. Each step justified, each step small enough not to trigger rebellion. You never wake up one day feeling owned. It happens drip by drip until compliance feels like comfort. Look at smartphones. When they first arrived, the idea of being constantly reachable felt absurd. Now, not being reachable feels irresponsible. The leash became a lifeline. We normalized surveillance by calling it connection. We normalized addiction by calling it engagement. We normalized manipulation by calling it marketing. Every system of control got a softer name, one that sounded harmless enough to live with. This is why the normalization law is more dangerous than open tyranny. Tyranny provokes resistance. Normalization sedates it. When you can convince people that control is a natural part of progress, they'll not only accept it, they'll defend it. They'll say things like, "That's just how the world works now," or "You can't stop technology," or "If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear." Those phrases aren't opinions. They're symptoms of successful normalization. You can see this pattern everywhere once you look. When workplaces started tracking employee productivity with keystroke loggers and cameras, people were outraged for about a week. Then they adjusted. When stores replaced cashiers with self-checkouts that record every motion, there was resistance, until the convenience kicked in. When social platforms began monitoring every word and click to improve experience, users hesitated, then surrendered for speed. Step by step, the unthinkable becomes tolerable, and the tolerable becomes invisible. There's a name for this slow acceptance: the boiling frog effect. Drop a frog into boiling water, and it jumps out immediately. Put it in cool water and heat it gradually, and it stays until it cooks. Humans behave the same way. Sudden control triggers revolt. Gradual control becomes culture. And once it becomes culture, no one remembers what freedom looked like before it. The normalization law isn't just about technology. It seeps into values, beliefs, even emotions. Think about how outrage cycles online. Something shocking happens, everyone explodes, then a new headline replaces it within hours. That emotional fatigue teaches you to stop caring. You start thinking, nothing ever changes, but something does change. Your threshold for shock gets higher. The system doesn't have to silence you, it just has to exhaust you. Here's the genius behind normalization. It hides power inside routine. You stop questioning terms and conditions because everyone clicks agree. You stop noticing cameras because they're everywhere. You stop worrying about privacy because giving it up gets you faster results. The system wins not by convincing you it's right, but by convincing you it's inevitable. And once inevitability sets in, The conversation shifts from should we allow this to how do we live with it. That's the moment control becomes permanent. Not because it's enforced, but because it's emotionally accepted. You stop asking if something is wrong and start wondering why you ever thought it was. That's the finish line of normalization, when obedience feels natural and freedom feels unnecessary. But here's the truth the system can't erase. Nothing about this is truly normal. You only stop noticing because you've been trained to stop noticing. The moment you pause and look again, really look, you start seeing how much control hides behind convenience, how much freedom we trade for comfort. Awareness pulls you out of the warm water. The law of normalization works only in silence. It thrives in your distracted acceptance. But the instant you start paying attention, the illusion cracks. Because what feels permanent isn't permanent. It's maintained. And anything maintained by habit can be unlearned by choice. That's the quiet power they hope you never rediscover. The ability to question what everyone else has agreed to stop seeing. The law of manufactured consent. You ever wonder how entire populations can be convinced to agree on something that benefits only a handful of people? How a brand, a policy, or a war can gain public support almost overnight? That's not a coincidence. That's the law of manufactured consent, the quiet machinery behind shaping what people believe, what they fear, and what they defend, even when it works against them. This law isn't about lying outright. It's about constructing a version of truth that feels safe to believe. It's about creating the illusion that everyone already agrees, so you go along too. Corporations and power systems know people don't like being told what to think. So instead, they make you feel like you chose it yourself. That's the genius of manufactured consent. People mistake persuasion for free will. The process always begins with control over information. Whoever frames the story controls the conclusion. The human mind is wired for simplicity. It seeks a clear villain, a clear hero, and a sense of meaning. Corporations feed those cravings with carefully curated narratives. They flood your world with headlines, influencers, hashtags, slogans, repeated until familiarity becomes truth. Psychologists call this the illusory truth effect. The more you hear something, the truer it feels, even if it's completely false. But repetition alone isn't enough. Manufactured consent depends on emotional engineering. Logic doesn't move crowds, emotion does. So they wrap every agenda in feeling pride, fear, outrage, belonging. Think about the way commercials use patriotism to sell products, or how news cycles amplify threats to keep you glued to the screen. It's not about facts, it's about direction. The more emotionally invested you are, the easier you are to steer. Consider how social media plays into this. Algorithms reward what provokes strong emotion: anger, desire, moral outrage. Those emotions keep you scrolling, but they also narrow your worldview. You start seeing only the opinions that mirror yours, only the stories that reinforce what you already believe. It creates a feedback loop, a digital echo chamber where disagreement feels like danger. The more one side screams, the more the other side doubles down, and in the chaos, corporations stay quietly in control. They don't need to censor you when they can drown you in noise. One of the most effective tools of this law is framing choice as moral alignment. If you don't buy this brand, you're against progress. If you question this policy, you're anti-safety. If you hesitate to support this movement, you're on the wrong side of history. It's emotional blackmail disguised as virtue. People want to be good, to belong to matter. And that instinct is exactly what's weaponized. Manufactured consent turns morality into marketing. You see it every day in the language we use. Terms like consumer confidence, brand loyalty, stakeholder trust. They sound harmless, but they describe emotional engineering at scale. When a company convinces you that buying from them is a statement of identity, they've already won. You're no longer making a rational choice. You're defending your sense of self. Once belief fuses with identity, questioning it feels like betrayal. That's the final stage, when manipulation no longer feels external, because it lives inside you. What's even more dangerous is how this law hides behind the illusion of democracy. The media says, the public supports this. But who measured that? Polls are framed, questions are worded, samples are selected, all designed to create a consensus that can be broadcast. Once you see it on screen, it feels real. You think everyone else believes this, so it must be true. And just like that, conformity spreads without force. You don't have to be convinced, just made to feel outnumbered. There's a famous phrase, control the narrative, control the mind. But in this age, it's not just the narrative being controlled. It's the context. You're not told what to think, you're told what to think about. Attention becomes the battlefield. What's trending becomes what matters. Silence becomes invisibility. And when your attention is guided, your consent follows. But the moment you start noticing how your beliefs are being shaped, that's when the spell starts to break. You realize that the outrage, the unity, the fear, all of it was directed energy, carefully orchestrated to align public will with corporate goals. Manufactured consent only works when people believe their agreement is organic. Awareness makes that impossible. Here's the quiet truth they don't want you to realize: mass belief doesn't have to be genuine to be powerful. It just has to look unanimous. And the only thing stronger than their control over the story is your ability to question why that story exists at all. The law of manufactured consent isn't about controlling your mind outright. It's about guiding what feels safe to believe, until truth itself becomes a matter of branding. And the moment you start thinking for yourself, you stop being the product. The law of attention capture. You ever notice how your attention never really belongs to you anymore? The moment you wake up, a screen is waiting. Notifications pulse, headlines flash, ads whisper your name. Every second, someone somewhere is trying to grab a piece of your focus, and not to serve you, but to sell you. That's the law of attention capture, the battleground for the modern mind. In a world overflowing with information, attention has become the most valuable currency and the most contested territory. The average person doesn't realize it, but their focus is the foundation of corporate power. Every click, every swipe, every glance is data, proof that you're still playing the game. Companies don't want your money first. They want your eyes, your time, your thoughts. Because once they have your attention, they can shape what you desire, what you fear, and what you buy. The real economy isn't built on products anymore. It's built on distraction. This is why every platform feels like a casino. You log in for a second, and suddenly an hour's gone. You weren't weak. You were engineered. These systems are designed by psychologists who understand your brain better than you do. They know how dopamine works, how curiosity loops form, how novelty resets your focus. Every sound, every color, every animation is crafted to keep you from looking away. What feels like choice is really a reflex being hijacked. Attention isn't infinite. It's a limited resource, like energy. And corporations fight to capture it the way nations once fought for oil. The longer they can hold your gaze, the more they can influence your behavior. That's why even the most meaningless content feels addictive. It's not what you're consuming, it's what you're losing: presence, patience, silence. Those moments of stillness that used to belong to you are now monetized seconds in someone else's profit report. Think about how every app on your phone fights for space in your mind. The red badges, the buzzes, the endless scroll. They're not there for convenience. They're there to keep your nervous system slightly anxious, always expecting something new. That tension keeps you tethered. You don't check your phone because you're curious. You check it because you've been conditioned to fear the quiet that comes without it. And it's not just social media. News outlets, entertainment companies, even education systems compete for the same limited pool of attention. Outrage gets clicks, simplicity gets shares. Fear keeps you watching. So the world becomes louder, faster, more emotional, because emotion captures attention better than truth ever could. In this war, whoever controls your emotional state controls your focus, and whoever controls your focus controls your behavior. This is why politics feels like entertainment now. Why headlines sound like scripts. Why every message is designed to provoke instead of inform. Outrage and confusion keep you locked in. They keep your attention bouncing between extremes, so you never pause long enough to ask, who benefits from me being this distracted? The science behind it is simple but devastating. The brain craves novelty. When you encounter something new, dopamine spikes, pushing you to explore. But once novelty becomes constant, your brain starts to crave stimulation itself. You stop seeking meaning and start seeking motion. That's why scrolling feels satisfying even when it's empty. Your brain isn't searching for truth. It's searching for the next hit of difference. Corporations figured out that the easiest way to win your attention is to keep you emotionally unstable, too bored to focus elsewhere, too overstimulated to think deeply. They've turned your attention span into a product line. You are both the consumer and the consumed. But the scariest part is how attention capture changes identity. The things you notice become the things you value. The things you value become the story you tell yourself about who you are. So when your attention is constantly guided by algorithms, your personality starts to align with what's profitable, not what's meaningful. Your focus builds their empire while your sense of self dissolves into noise. Ever wonder why silence feels uncomfortable now? Why stillness feels like something's wrong? That's because silence doesn't sell. Stillness can't be monetized. The system thrives on your inability to stop consuming. If you stop, it stops. That's why it keeps whispering. One more video, one more scroll, one more update. Because every moment you're still, they lose money. But here's the truth that cuts through the noise: attention is choice. Whatever you give it to, you give power to. When you learn to guard your attention, you reclaim your freedom. You start noticing how much of your day is spent reacting instead of deciding. You start remembering that focus isn't just a skill, it's resistance. The law of attention capture isn't about controlling what you see. It's about making sure you never stop seeing. It replaces meaning with motion, depth with speed, truth with stimulation. And the only way to break free is to do the thing the system fears most. Stop. Turn off the noise. Reclaim your silence. Because in a world built to steal your focus, The most rebellious act is to pay attention on your own terms. The law of familiarity. Have you ever noticed how something that once sounded absurd can start to feel true after you've heard it enough times? A slogan, a headline, a rumor, repeated, echoed, shared, until one day it just feels familiar, and familiar starts to feel safe. That's the law of familiarity, the subtle but terrifying truth that repetition creates trust, even in lies. The human brain has a shortcut. It confuses what's familiar with what's true. Psychologists call it the illusory truth effect. When you hear something repeatedly, your brain spends less effort evaluating it and more effort recognizing it. Recognition feels comfortable, and comfort feels like truth. Corporations, advertisers, and media manipulators know this better than anyone. They don't need to prove anything to you. They just need to repeat it enough times until your resistance wears down. It starts small. A phrase here, a logo there, a promise whispered over and over. Better, faster, safer, smarter. At first, you question it. But after the 10th time, the phrase doesn't sound like persuasion anymore. It sounds like reality. You stop analyzing and start accepting. That's the moment they've won. Truth becomes a matter of exposure, not evidence. Repetition doesn't just build belief, it builds emotion. Every time a message repeats, it leaves a small emotional imprint. Over time, those imprints form a feeling of familiarity. That feeling becomes trust. And once trust is there, facts don't matter much. If something feels familiar, it feels right. That's why marketing campaigns never really end. They just loop endlessly. The same jingles, the same taglines, the same imagery, training your subconscious to relax whenever their brand appears. Think about how propaganda works. It never argues, it echoes. It repeats the same narrative until opposition feels strange. The same image of the enemy, the same heroic music, the same reassuring voice. Repetition creates emotional muscle memory. You might not even agree consciously, but your subconscious starts nodding along. You start finishing the sentence before they do. That's how mass belief is built, not by logic, but by rhythm. And it's not just politics or advertising. It's in every feed you scroll. Algorithms are designed to amplify what you already react to, showing it to you again and again. At first, it's just content. Then it becomes confirmation. You start seeing the same ideas everywhere, and it starts to feel like everyone believes them. But what's really happening is the system reflecting your own bias back at you until it becomes a mirror maze. You mistake repetition for consensus. You start to think, if I keep seeing it, it must be true. The law of familiarity turns exposure into persuasion. That's why headlines repeat the same phrases. Why brands reuse the same colors. Why influencers echo the same talking points. It's not laziness. It's psychological precision. Familiarity bypasses skepticism. It's why politicians rehearse the same lines word for word, and why companies flood you with ads you think you're ignoring. Even when you scroll past them, your brain records them. The next time you see that logo, it feels oddly trustworthy, even if you've never bought a thing. What's dangerous is how this law makes lies immune to logic. Once a false idea feels familiar, disproving it barely matters. You can show people facts, studies, evidence, but if the lie feels more familiar, they'll still believe it. Emotion always beats reason when repetition is involved. That's why misinformation spreads faster than truth. Truth needs proof. Lies only need volume, and the volume never stops. Social media has turned repetition into an ecosystem. Trends repeat, memes repeat, outrage repeats. Every scroll is another rehearsal. You don't even need to believe what you're seeing. Your brain's just soaking in the rhythm. The more something circulates, the more legitimate it seems. Familiarity becomes a quiet form of hypnosis. But here's where it gets personal. This law doesn't just shape your opinions. It shapes your identity. The things you repeatedly consume become the lens through which you see the world. The phrases you hear often enough become the ones you start using. The beliefs that surround you long enough become part of who you are. Repetition doesn't just control what you think, it controls how you think. So how do you fight it? You start noticing patterns. You start asking, why am I seeing this again? Who benefits if I believe it? The moment you become aware of repetition as a tactic, its power weakens. Familiarity can't fool you when you recognize it for what it is. A loop designed to replace truth with comfort. The law of familiarity thrives on your inattention. It counts on you mistaking exposure for evidence and comfort for credibility. But awareness cuts the loop, because once you see that repetition isn't proof, it's programming. You start questioning every echo that used to sound like truth, and that's when your mind starts belonging to you again. The law of scarcity. Have you ever noticed how your pulse quickens the moment you hear the words, limited time offer, or only 2 left in stock? That rush you feel, that little jolt of panic, isn't coincidence. It's design. That's the law of scarcity, the principle that urgency forces action and overrides reflection. It's one of the oldest psychological levers of control, and corporations have turned it into an art form. Here's how it works. Scarcity triggers a primal instinct. The fear of loss. Thousands of years ago, that fear kept humans alive. If food or shelter was running out, hesitation could mean death. The brain evolved to treat scarcity as danger and abundance as safety. But in the modern world, that wiring is constantly exploited. You see a countdown timer on a website, and your mind registers threat, not marketing. It tells you to act now, think later. You're not making a choice. You're reacting to survival code. Corporations know that people rarely make rational decisions when urgency enters the equation. Reflection slows sales, doubt kills conversions. So they create pressure where none exists. A sale that ends tonight magically reappears tomorrow. A limited edition product suddenly restocks next week. The trick isn't about actual scarcity. It's about perceived scarcity. Manufacturing the feeling that time, opportunity, or approval is slipping away. Think about every online booking platform. You've seen it. Only 1 room left at this price, or 20 people are viewing this item right now. Whether or not it's true doesn't matter. Your brain interprets it as competition. You imagine invisible others snatching away what you want. That image triggers urgency, and urgency overrides logic. You don't pause to check if the deal is fair. You just click, buy. The system wins because you acted, not because you decided. Scarcity also plays directly into identity. People don't just want what's rare, they want what makes them rare. Exclusivity becomes emotional currency. Luxury brands know this better than anyone. They release limited runs, create waiting lists, manufacture demand through artificial inaccessibility. The result: desire becomes status. You don't buy the product for its value. You buy it for the feeling of being one of the few who could. And it doesn't stop with products. Social platforms use scarcity to control your behavior too. Ever notice how stories and streaks vanish after 24 hours? That's not about creativity. That's engineered urgency. It keeps you coming back daily, afraid to miss out, afraid to lose progress. That's scarcity in digital forms, time-bound validation that trains your nervous system to stay engaged. You can't pause, because pausing means losing your place in the feed, in the game, in the social hierarchy. This is where scarcity becomes dangerous. When urgency dominates, reflection disappears. You stop weighing pros and cons. You stop asking, "Do I really want this?" Or, "Who benefits from this rush?" Instead, your focus narrows to one thought: don't miss out. That's what psychologists call loss aversion, the human tendency to feel the pain of losing something more intensely than the pleasure of gaining it. The system uses that imbalance to guide every click, every purchase, every decision. Even news cycles run on scarcity now. Every headline screams breaking. Every story claims to be the one you can't miss. It's a constant race for your attention. And in that race, panic replaces perspective. You consume faster, think shallower, feel more anxious, and in the chaos, you stay hooked because urgency is addictive. It feels like importance. And that illusion of importance keeps you engaged far longer than truth ever could. Scarcity also plays a role in social control. Political and corporate messaging often leans on last chances. Last chance to save your freedom, your safety, your future. The moment fear of missing out mixes with fear of loss, people will trade autonomy for certainty. They'll surrender rights, time, and even privacy just to stop feeling that creeping anxiety of running out of something vital. But here's the real secret. The things they tell you are scarce. Attention, time, opportunity. Only feel that way because they've been divided and commodified. The more they fragment your focus and overload your mind, the more precious your attention seems. The more precious it seems, the more valuable it becomes to them. That's why every system pushes you to move fast. Because if you ever slowed down long enough to see the pattern, the spell would break. Scarcity thrives on panic. It feeds on urgency. But once you start noticing the moment your pulse speeds up, the illusion loses power. You realize you have more time than they want you to believe. More choices than they let you see. Scarcity isn't a natural law. It's a manufactured emotion. The law of scarcity works by keeping you in motion, afraid to pause, afraid to think. But freedom always begins in the pause. The moment you stop reacting, urgency dissolves. The noise fades, and you remember. What's truly valuable isn't what's limited. It's what can't be taken from you when you finally decide to slow down. The law of cognitive dissonance. You ever catch yourself defending something you know deep down isn't right? A brand, a belief, a politician, just because admitting you were wrong would sting too much. That's not weakness. That's psychology. That's the law of cognitive dissonance. The force that makes people defend their own manipulation, even when the truth is staring them in the face. Cognitive dissonance happens when your beliefs and your actions clash. The mind can't stand that tension, so it tries to resolve it. Not by changing the behavior, but by rewriting the belief. The moment you invest time, money, or emotion into something, your brain gets attached. And if evidence appears that contradicts it, you don't drop the belief. You twist reality until it still fits. The mind would rather be comfortable than correct. Corporations and systems of power have weaponized this mental glitch. They know once they can make you participate in your own manipulation. Once you've clicked, bought, shared, or pledged loyalty, your own pride will do the rest. You'll rationalize their behavior to protect your ego. You'll defend them as if you were defending yourself. That's the moment control becomes invisible, because you stop seeing it as control at all. Think about the last time a company got caught exploiting workers, polluting the planet, or lying in their marketing, and people still defended them. Well, every business does that, they'll say. Or, it's not that bad. Or, I still like their products. That's cognitive dissonance doing damage control. You know it's wrong. But admitting it would mean admitting you were fooled, that your loyalty was misplaced. And that hurts more than the lie itself. The deeper the investment, the stronger the defense. That's why brands spend billions building emotional bonds. They don't just sell products, they sell identity. If you see yourself as an Apple person, a Tesla driver, a loyal fan of a certain franchise, then criticism of that brand feels like criticism of you. The manipulation becomes self-sustaining. You police yourself. You become the guardian of your own cage. The same principle fuels political loyalty, religious devotion, even social movements. Once people publicly commit, their identity fuses with the cause. When facts emerge that contradict it, they experience dissonance, a psychological ache that demands relief. Instead of rethinking the belief, they double down. They dismiss the source, attack the critic, or invent justifications. It's not that they're blind. It's that the truth threatens the version of themselves they've built. Psychologists have studied this for decades. In one classic experiment, participants were asked to perform a boring, repetitive task, then paid either $1 or $20 to tell the next participant it was fun. Strangely, the people paid only $1 later claimed they actually enjoyed it more. Why? Because $1 wasn't enough to justify lying. Their minds had to create a new belief. I must have actually liked it, to resolve the discomfort. The same mechanism operates on a massive scale today. The more you feel responsible for a choice, the more fiercely you'll defend it, even if it hurts you. Corporations use this to perfection. They make you choose to give away your data, choose to agree to invasive terms, choose to pay for upgrades that shouldn't exist. Once you click, I agree, the manipulation becomes consensual, and therefore unchallengeable. If you start feeling uneasy about it later, your brain whispers, well, I chose it, so it must be fine. That's not acceptance. That's dissonance soothing your pride. Social media deepens this trap. You post your opinions publicly, get validation, and build an identity around those beliefs. Then new information appears that contradicts what you said. You can't backtrack without losing face, so you rationalize harder. You defend your post, not because it's right, but because deleting it feels like erasing part of yourself. The system doesn't need to correct you. It just needs to make sure your ego does the policing. The law of cognitive dissonance is the reason propaganda doesn't collapse under its own contradictions. People will ignore obvious hypocrisy if admitting it means shattering their worldview. They'll say, sure, that's bad, but it's still better than the alternative. They'll defend harmful systems because those systems give them stability, identity, or the illusion of control. The brain craves coherence more than truth. But once you start seeing the pattern, you begin to notice how often that discomfort shows up, that tiny flicker of inner resistance when something doesn't add up. That's the signal most people silence, but it's actually your freedom alarm. When you feel it, instead of defending the belief, ask, why do I feel the need to defend this so badly? That question breaks the loop, because the moment you can sit with dissonance instead of escaping it, manipulation loses its grip. The law of cognitive dissonance isn't about making you believe a lie. It's about making you protect it. It turns pride into armor, identity into chains, and discomfort into denial. But awareness flips it. The moment you choose truth over comfort, the whole structure falls apart, and the belief you once defended becomes the doorway to your own awakening. The law of convenience dependency. Have you noticed how everything these days promises to make your life easier? 1. Tap ordering. Auto, renew subscriptions. Smart homes that remember your habits. Cars that drive, apps that decide, devices that think for you. It feels like progress, like liberation. But beneath that comfort lies something else. That's the law of convenience dependency. Control disguised as simplicity. The easiest way to enslave a population isn't through force. It's through ease. Because people don't resist what makes life smoother. They welcome it. They thank it. They depend on it. Convenience is the most seductive form of control because it doesn't look like control at all. It feels like relief. At first, convenience is harmless. It saves you time, effort, decisions. But slowly, almost invisibly, it becomes a leash. Every shortcut you accept transfers a bit of your independence to the system that provides it. Every auto-fill, every algorithmic suggestion, every "let us handle it for you" moment chips away at your agency. You stop remembering passwords, stop making choices, stop thinking about how things work. Because the system already does it for you. And when the system does everything, it owns everything, including you. This law works because the brain craves efficiency. We are built to conserve energy, to prefer the path of least resistance. Corporations exploit that instinct relentlessly. They design ecosystems, not products, networks that handle every aspect of your life, so leaving them feels impossible. You start with one app, one device, one account. Then suddenly your photos, your finances, your communication, your identity, all depend on the same infrastructure. What began as a service becomes a survival mechanism, and dependency isn't accidental. It's engineered. That's why everything smart is connected. Your thermostat, your watch, your fridge, all syncing to a cloud you don't control. They tell you it's for your convenience, but it's really about data. Collecting it, predicting you through it, monetizing your habits. The easier your life feels, the more predictable it becomes, and predictability is the currency of control. Think about how streaming services changed entertainment. You no longer own music or movies. You rent access to them through platforms that can revoke it anytime. Your playlists, your preferences, your memories, all stored somewhere else, under someone else's terms. The illusion of endless choice hides the truth that nothing is truly yours. You traded ownership for ease. It's the same with digital assistants. You ask them to play songs, answer questions, manage your schedule, and they listen to everything. You invite surveillance into your home because it's convenient. And over time, you forget it's there. That's the brilliance of this law. When control looks like help, you stop seeing the cage. Convenience also reshapes behavior. You stop exploring alternatives because the default is faster. You stop questioning updates, prices, policies, because reading fine print feels like friction. The system counts on your exhaustion, on your willingness to accept whatever saves a few minutes. That's why frictionless design is such a holy phrase in tech. Every removed barrier removes a thought. Every skipped decision deepens your dependency. This is how digital monopolies are born. They don't need to force loyalty. They make it effortless to stay and inconvenient to leave. Switching platforms means losing history, photos, friends, files. So you stay, even when you know better. That's not loyalty. That's learned helplessness wrapped in convenience. And the scariest part, once dependency is complete, control can tighten without resistance. Prices rise, privacy shrinks, features change, and people adapt instead of rebel. Because starting over feels harder than staying trapped. The comfort becomes a cage lined with velvet. You can't feel the bars, but they're there, closing in with every update you don't read. The law of convenience dependency is the slowest and softest form of control. It doesn't demand obedience. It earns it. It trains you to equate effort with pain and ease with progress. But the more the system handles for you, the less you handle for yourself. You stop navigating. You stop remembering. You stop choosing. That's how free will dissolves. Not in violence, but in automation. The irony is that true freedom has always required effort. Choice takes energy. Reflection takes time. But the world now frames those things as inconveniences. Thinking for yourself, protecting your data, saying no, all framed as outdated burdens. The system whispers, "Don't worry, we've got it covered." And every time you believe it, you hand over one more piece of your autonomy. But the moment you notice the trade, the illusion cracks. You start asking, why is this so easy? Who benefits from my dependency? Because once you question convenience, you begin reclaiming power. You start valuing friction, the kind that forces awareness, the kind that reminds you you're still in charge. The law of convenience dependency works only when comfort blinds you to the cost. But when you start seeing ease as an exchange, when you realize every shortcut carries a leash, you begin to choose differently. You remember that not all effort is suffering. Sometimes effort is freedom in disguise. The law of brand religion. You ever notice how some people talk about brands the way others talk about gods? They wear the logo like a badge of honor. They defend it in arguments with strangers online. They celebrate its releases as if attending a ritual. That's not just marketing. That's devotion. That's the law of brand religion, when loyalty becomes faith and rebellion feels like sin. This isn't just about liking a product. It's about believing in what it represents. Corporations figured out that if they could turn customers into believers, they'd never have to sell again. They'd just have to preach. Because faith doesn't ask for proof. Faith demands loyalty. And once you've tied your identity to a brand, questioning it feels like questioning yourself. It starts innocently enough. A product makes your life easier. You admire the design, the quality, the innovation. Then you start associating it with more than function. It becomes a statement. Apple isn't just a phone, it's creativity. Nike isn't just shoes, it's ambition. Tesla isn't just a car, it's the future. Each brand builds a mythology. Heroes, enemies, miracles. Steve Jobs becomes a prophet. Elon Musk a messiah. The brand transforms from object to ideology. And here's where control seeps in. Religion runs on belief systems, and belief systems resist doubt. Once you're emotionally invested, you defend the brand's flaws with the same energy you defend your own. When it makes mistakes, you rationalize. When it overcharges, you justify. When it lies, you forgive. Because deep down, you're not protecting the brand. You're protecting the part of yourself that believes in it. Psychologists call this identity fusion. It's when your personal identity merges with a group or symbol so completely that any threat to it feels like a threat to you. That's why when someone criticizes your favorite brand, you take it personally. It's not a debate about technology or sneakers anymore. It's a battle for belonging. The corporation doesn't need to control you. Your pride does the work. Look at the rituals. People camp outside stores for launches. They line up for hours, not out of necessity, but reverence. The unveiling of a new product feels like a holy event. The marketing uses the same structure as religion. Symbols, narratives, promises of transformation. You don't just buy the product, you're reborn through it. You become part of the chosen. And just like faith communities, brands create insiders and outsiders. You're either one of us or you're not. Social media supercharges this effect. Every post, every hashtag, every unboxing becomes a digital sermon. Fans evangelize without pay, spreading the gospel of the brand. They call it community, but it's really congregation. You get validation through your devotion, likes, follows, belonging. And that belonging is addictive. It fills the same psychological need that religion once did. Certainty, identity, and connection. But the danger of brand religion isn't just blind loyalty. It's moral inversion. Once the brand becomes sacred, criticism becomes heresy. When a company exploits workers, harms the environment, or manipulates data, believers don't revolt. They rationalize. They say, it's complicated. It's not their fault. They're still better than the rest. The brand becomes untouchable, no matter how corrupt it becomes. And the cycle of worship continues. That's how corporations evolve from service providers into cultural gods. They create moral frameworks. Buy this to be good, wear this to belong, use this to care about the planet. They convert consumers into missionaries who defend billion-dollar entities as if protecting sacred truth. When loyalty turns into faith, control doesn't even need to be hidden anymore. It's celebrated. This law also explains why rebellion feels so wrong. When you stop buying, stop defending, stop believing, it feels like betrayal. That guilt isn't natural, it's engineered. Decades of branding rewired your emotions to associate doubt with disloyalty. You don't just leave a company, you fall from grace. You don't just switch products, you question your own identity. That's how deep the psychological web runs. The law of brand religion turns capitalism into catechism. The commandments are simple: believe, buy, belong. The rituals are daily check updates: praise the design, defend the tribe. And just like faith, it thrives on emotion over evidence. You don't need logic when you have belonging. You don't need proof when you have passion. But once you see it, really see it, the spell breaks. You realize you can admire innovation without worshiping it. You can appreciate design without defending deceit. You can use products without becoming property. That's the quiet rebellion, choosing awareness over allegiance. The law of brand religion only works when you forget that your loyalty was chosen for you. But the moment you remember that belief is optional, the altar loses its power. You don't have to kneel to participate. You can stand, look the brand in the eye, and say, I'll use your product, but I'll never give you my faith. The law of planned obsolescence. Ever wonder why things don't last anymore? Why your phone slows down right after the warranty ends? Why your laptop feels outdated 2 years in? Or why that shiny new gadget suddenly can't support the latest update? That's not bad luck or progress. That's design. That's the law of planned obsolescence, the built-in need for endless consumption. This law is simple but ruthless. If products lasted forever, profits wouldn't. So corporations make sure they don't. every upgrade, every new and improved version, every sealed battery or unfixable part is part of a cycle engineered to keep you buying again and again. It's not innovation, it's addiction disguised as advancement. The system learned early that durability is bad for business. In the 1920s, light bulb manufacturers formed a cartel called the Phoebus Group. They literally agreed to limit bulb lifespan to around 1,000 hours so sales would keep cycling. Before that, bulbs could last for decades. There's one still glowing today in a California fire station, over a century old. That tiny bulb exposes the truth: things could last, but they're not meant to. Because permanence doesn't pay. Modern corporations don't destroy your products with a timer. They do it with psychology. They use design, software, and status to make old things feel unacceptable. A phone that works perfectly fine becomes obsolete the moment a new model launches. You don't replace it because it's broken. You replace it because the world convinces you it's embarrassing not to. That's not progress. That's programmed insecurity. Planned obsolescence works on two levels: physical decay and emotional decay. Physical decay is obvious. Batteries sealed in, screws replaced with glue, repair manuals hidden, parts discontinued. Everything is built just durable enough to survive the warranty, but fragile enough to fail after. Meanwhile, emotional decay runs deeper. It's when the product still functions, but no longer satisfies. The brand whispers, "You deserve better," and suddenly, what was once new feels inadequate. Fashion runs on this principle completely. Last season's design becomes social poison the moment new trends appear. It's not that your clothes wore out. Your confidence did. Fast fashion companies build identity churn into their business model. They feed off your need to stay relevant, then replace that relevance every few weeks. The planet pays the price, but the cycle keeps spinning because people fear looking outdated more than they fear waste. Technology learned from fashion. Updates now create planned obsolescence through software. You get a notification saying your device no longer supports the latest version. Suddenly, apps stop working, performance drops, compatibility vanishes. You're cornered. Upgrade or be left behind. That's not a technical limitation. It's a strategy. They control the lifespan of your technology, not by how it's built, but by what it's allowed to connect to. This conditioning shapes how people view value itself. We've been trained to equate new with better. Marketing pushes the myth that progress means replacement. You're told that to keep up, you must discard. That's why recycling campaigns rarely mention the root problem, the endless production cycle. The burden is placed on you to feel guilty about the waste they designed into existence. It's not accidental, it's moral manipulation. And here's the cruel twist. Planned obsolescence doesn't just drain your wallet. It rewires your sense of satisfaction. You stop forming long-term attachments to anything. You don't repair, you replace. You don't maintain, you upgrade. Even relationships and experiences start to mirror this disposable mindset. When everything is built to expire, permanence starts to feel unnatural. The system wins when nothing, not even your patience, lasts. But the brilliance of this law lies in how invisible it is. You don't see a timer counting down. You just feel an itch. The new model looks sleeker, faster, lighter. The marketing reminds you subtly that yours is slower, heavier, outdated. It's psychological erosion, small enough to ignore, consistent enough to wear you down. And the moment you buy the next thing, relief hits. The discomfort fades. For now. until the cycle begins again. Repair used to be rebellion. Now it's nearly impossible. Try fixing a modern phone or car. You'll face proprietary screws, locked software, and warranty void warnings. Right to repair. Laws exist because the system made ownership an illusion. You don't own your products anymore. You lease access until they decide you've had enough. That's control disguised as progress. The law of planned obsolescence keeps the machine running by keeping you running, always chasing, never arriving. It feeds on dissatisfaction, on the illusion that happiness is one purchase away. But here's the truth: they can't sell you lasting satisfaction. Doesn't need updates. Real value doesn't expire. The moment you stop measuring worth by novelty, you break the loop. You start fixing instead of replacing. You start valuing simplicity over spectacle. You start realizing that new doesn't always mean better. Sometimes it just means more of the same lie, wrapped in sheenier plastic. The law of planned obsolescence only works when you forget that enough is already enough. The moment you remember that, truly remember, the endless cycle of need collapses, and what's left isn't lack, it's freedom. The law of data ownership. Think about this. Every tap, scroll, click, pause, purchase, every word you speak to your phone, all of it is data. And that data is not just information. It's power, because whoever owns the data owns the decision-making. That's the law of data ownership, the invisible empire of control built not on armies, but on algorithms. The truth is, most people have no idea how valuable their data actually is. They think it's just digital exhaust, a trail of habits floating through the internet. But data is the modern equivalent of oil, except more potent. Oil fuels machines, data fuels decisions. Oil runs out, data multiplies. The more you produce, the smarter the system gets. About you. It learns what you like, what you fear, what you crave, when you're vulnerable, when you'll buy. Then, it doesn't just predict your behavior. It starts shaping it. This law runs on a simple equation: knowledge equals control. When you know someone better than they know themselves, you can steer them without them realizing. That's exactly what corporations do. They collect enough data to build a digital twin of you, a version that exists inside their servers, made of patterns and probabilities. That version knows which headline makes you click, which color makes you trust, which emotion makes you spend. You become predictable. And predictability is the death of freedom. Here's the catch: you gave it all away. Every time you agreed to terms and conditions. Every time you let an app personalize your experience. Every time you clicked allow without reading, you transferred ownership. Your digital self stopped being yours. Companies don't pay for your data because they don't have to. You hand it to them willingly because they've convinced you it's harmless. But once they own it, they own influence. Think about how decisions are made now. Algorithms decide which job listings you see, which prices you pay, which news stories reach you, even who you date. But you don't get to see how those algorithms work. They're black boxes, trained on your behavior, but controlled by someone else. That means the decisions that shape your reality are being made by systems optimized for profit, not truth. And when you lose control of the inputs, you lose control of the outcomes. The genius of this system is how invisible it feels. You don't feel watched. You feel catered to. Every ad seems relevant. Every feed feels personal. Every recommendation feels helpful. You think you're being understood, but you're being profiled. They call it personalization, but it's really manipulation wearing a friendly face. Because the better they know you, the easier it is to sell to you. Not just products, but ideas, beliefs, and identities. This is why free is the most expensive word online. When something costs nothing, you are the product. Social media platforms don't sell apps, they sell attention. And your attention is auctioned to the highest bidder. Your data determines your value. Not your worth as a person, but your potential to be influenced. Every like, every pause, every glance at a headline feeds the machine that decides what you'll see next. That's not democracy. That's design. Data ownership isn't just about privacy. It's about power dynamics. If a corporation knows your routines, your desires, your weaknesses, they don't need to control you directly. They just need to control the environment around you. They can adjust what you see, when you see it, and how it's framed. And you'll think you're making free choices, when really, you're following the path their data models built for you. Governments have learned this too. Surveillance isn't just about security anymore. It's about influence. When data determines everything from policy to policing, the ones who own it control the narrative. That's why battles over data sovereignty are really battles for dominance. It's not about protecting information. It's about deciding whose interests reality serves. And yet, most people don't fight for their data because the loss doesn't feel physical. You can feel someone steal your wallet. You can't feel someone copy your soul, but that's what's happening. Your digital reflection, the sum of your behaviors, is being cloned and sold 1,000 times over. And the more data they collect, the less unpredictable you become. The system doesn't need to guess anymore. It just nudges. That's the terrifying beauty of the law of data ownership. It doesn't force you to obey. It makes obedience feel like choice. The feed shows you what you want. The offer appears at the perfect time. The decisions feel like yours. But the path you took to reach them was engineered long before you saw it. Real freedom in the digital age doesn't come from disconnecting, it comes from reclaiming ownership. Knowing what's being collected. Questioning who benefits from it. Refusing to trade privacy for convenience. Because data is power, and giving it away means giving away the ability to decide your own direction. Whoever owns the data owns the story, and the story shapes reality. The only way to stay free inside that system is to write your own story before someone else writes it for you. The law of authority bias. You ever notice how quickly people obey someone who looks the part? A man in a uniform, a woman with a title, a voice that sounds certain. We don't stop to question, we comply. That's the law of authority bias, obedience to power symbols and institutional cues. It's one of the oldest forms of control, and it works because it hides in plain sight. Authority bias is wired into the human brain. From childhood, we're trained to associate obedience with safety. Parents, teachers, police, bosses, people who reward compliance and punish defiance. Our nervous systems learn early that resisting authority feels dangerous. So when someone appears powerful, confident, or official, the mind defaults to trust. It's not a conscious decision. It's instinct. Corporations, governments, and media systems use this reflex like a key. They wrap their influence in symbols that signal legitimacy. Logos, titles, certifications, credentials, and polished presentation. You see a lab coat, you assume expertise. You hear, scientifically proven, you assume truth. You see, official partner, you assume safety. The system knows you won't inspect the details because the symbol already convinced your subconscious. Psychologist Stanley Milgram proved this decades ago. In his infamous experiment, ordinary people were told by a man in a lab coat to administer electric shocks to a stranger. The shocks weren't real, but the participants didn't know that. Many went all the way to the highest voltage, even as the person screamed in pain. Why? Because the authority told them to. The power of the white coat overrode their conscience. That's authority bias at work, when moral intuition surrenders to perceived legitimacy. Now imagine that same mechanism scaled globally. Corporations wear the uniform of expertise. Governments wear the badge of protection. Media outlets wear the suit of credibility. Every symbol designed to say one thing: trust me, I know what's best for you. And once that trust is secured, manipulation becomes effortless. You don't need force when people willingly hand you their judgment. Think about advertising. When a celebrity endorses a product, sales spike, not because the celebrity knows anything about it, but because fame carries borrowed authority. The same applies to experts. In commercials, actors dressed as doctors recommending pills or toothpaste. The brain doesn't ask for credentials, it recognizes the symbol and obeys. Visual authority bypasses logic faster than any argument. Social media made this worse. Now, blue checkmarks and follower counts function as new authority badges. People assume influence equals credibility. If someone has a massive platform, their words must carry truth. That's how misinformation spreads faster than fact. Because authority is no longer earned, it's performed. The more confident you sound, the more power you hold, even if everything you're saying is empty. This law thrives because humans crave certainty. In a chaotic world, authority feels like order. Following experts feels safer than facing complexity alone. Corporations exploit that emotional need. They speak in definitive tones, use institutional language, flood you with statistics and studies, most of which you'll never verify. The performance of expertise becomes the substitute for truth itself. And the system knows obedience feels moral. That's the trick. When authority bias activates, compliance feels righteous. You think you're being responsible, informed, or loyal. You're not obeying for them. You're obeying for your sense of self. That's how control internalizes. You start policing your own skepticism because doubt feels like disobedience. But here's the quiet danger. When authority becomes unquestionable, corruption hides inside its shadow. The more official something looks, the less scrutiny it gets. Financial systems collapse because people assume experts have it handled. Pharmaceutical scandals erupt because patients trust the brand name. Wars are justified with charts and flags and suits on television. And people comply, not out of malice, but because it feels wrong not to. Authority bias doesn't just shape behavior, it shapes perception itself. It changes who we listen to, what we believe, and how we define truth. When an institution repeats something enough times with confidence, the repetition itself becomes proof. That's how narratives solidify, through tone, not evidence. The delivery convinces you long before the logic does. Breaking free from this bias doesn't mean rejecting all authority. It means separating authority from appearance. True expertise doesn't need spectacle. Real truth holds up under scrutiny. The problem begins when you stop questioning, when symbols replace substance. Because once that happens, obedience becomes reflex, and reflex becomes control. The law of authority bias isn't about power itself, it's about perception. It turns uniforms into commands, credentials into truth, and certainty into currency. The moment you pause and ask who benefits from my obedience, the illusion starts to fade. You begin to see the difference between authority that serves and authority that sells. Obedience feels comfortable. It relieves you of the burden of thinking. But comfort is the first symptom of control. The world doesn't need more followers of symbols. It needs thinkers who can tell the difference between truth and theater. Because once you reclaim that awareness, the badge loses its magic and power loses its spell. The law of psychological feedback loops. Ever wonder why you pick up your phone just to check one thing, and 20 minutes disappear? Why you refresh the same app even when you know nothing new is there? That's not you being weak. That's design. That's the law of psychological feedback loops. Digital reinforcement that keeps you hooked. Every swipe, every notification, every like is part of a loop engineered to hijack your brain's reward system. These loops are invisible cages, disguised as interaction. They feed you small doses of dopamine, the chemical of anticipation, not satisfaction, just enough to keep you chasing. You think you're using the app, but the app is using you. It starts with the most basic principle of conditioning, the same one scientists used to train lab rats. You press a lever, you get a reward. In the digital version, you post something, someone reacts. You refresh, something new appears. But here's the key: the reward is unpredictable. Sometimes it's a flood of likes, sometimes it's silence. That uncertainty is what hooks you. Psychologists call it variable reinforcement, and it's the most addictive pattern ever discovered. Slot machines run on it. Casinos know that guaranteed wins bore you, but random ones thrill you. Social media platforms learned from the same blueprint. Your feed isn't just showing updates. It's spinning a slot reel of social validation. Every scroll is a pull of the lever. Every notification is a flicker of reward. And every tiny hit keeps you wanting the next one. Tech companies didn't stumble into this by accident. They employ behavioral psychologists, neuroscientists, and data analysts whose entire job is to optimize engagement, to keep your thumb moving. They test colors, timing, sound frequencies, even vibration patterns, all to maximize that dopamine flicker, the red notification badge. That's not aesthetic. It's chosen because red triggers urgency and anxiety, emotions that drive immediate action. This constant stimulation traps you in a feedback loop. The loop goes like this: stimulus, reward, anticipation, repeat. Over time, the brain rewires itself around the cycle. You stop seeking joy, you start seeking relief from the tension between notifications. The craving becomes the comfort. You're not enjoying the experience. You're soothing withdrawal, and the system watches. Every second you linger, every post you like, every video you skip, it learns. The algorithm tailors the next round of stimuli to your exact triggers. It becomes a mirror that knows you better than you know yourself. If you like anger, it feeds you outrage. If you crave validation, it feeds you attention. The loop sharpens itself with every touch. It's a digital echo chamber, personalized for your addiction. The scariest part: you think you're in control. You think you're scrolling for entertainment, staying informed, connecting. But the truth is, the machine is training you. Each loop teaches your brain to expect micro rewards. Each silence triggers anxiety. Each return delivers relief. That's how habits become compulsions. When behavior stops being chosen and starts being automatic. It's why you can't just delete the app and move on. The pattern doesn't live in your phone. It lives in your brain. You've conditioned yourself to seek stimulation on demand. The moment boredom hits, the mind screams for a hit of novelty. That's why detoxes feel like withdrawal. You're not missing information, you're missing the chemical feedback that told your brain it was alive. This loop isn't just about attention, it's about control. The longer you stay engaged, the more data they harvest. The more data they have, the better they predict your triggers. And the better they predict your triggers, the stronger the loop becomes. You end up trapped in a system that feeds on your biology while convincing you it's giving you freedom. You've probably noticed how apps reward you for coming back. Streaks, badges, you've got memories to look at. Or people are waiting for your reply. None of that exists to serve you. It exists to keep you cycling. They turned social validation into a reward mechanism and social anxiety into a punishment. It's digital conditioning, and it works because it's invisible. But there's one thing the system can't predict: awareness. The moment you start noticing the pattern, the loop starts to weaken. The thrill of the notification fades when you see it as bait. The scroll feels different when you realize you're being measured by every second you give away. Awareness doesn't break the loop immediately, but it makes you conscious again, and consciousness is the antidote to control. The law of psychological feedback loops is the nervous system of modern manipulation. It doesn't demand obedience. It rewards submission. It doesn't silence you. It distracts you. You're not chained by force. You're chained by pleasure. The loop feeds you just enough to keep you hungry, just enough to keep you scrolling, just enough to keep you from looking up. But if you ever pause, really pause, and let the silence stretch longer than the craving, you'll feel something the system can't replicate. Stillness, freedom. The moment you stop responding to the loop, the machine loses its rhythm. And when the rhythm breaks, control breaks with it. The law of consumer addiction. It always starts small. A little treat after a long day. A new gadget because you deserve it. A subscription because it makes life easier. And before you realize it, your habits aren't random. They're engineered. That's the law of consumer addiction. The dopamine-driven dependence on corporate products that keeps you buying, craving, and repeating. See, the modern marketplace isn't built on need anymore. It's built on chemistry. Companies learned that if they can trigger a little spike of pleasure in your brain, they don't just sell you a product, they sell you a feeling. And once your brain links that feeling to the brand, logic doesn't matter anymore. You'll come back, again and again, chasing that same rush you got the first time. The foundation of this law lies in one molecule: dopamine. It's not the chemical of happiness, like most people think. It's the chemical of wanting. Dopamine fires not when you get the reward, but when you anticipate it. That's the secret. The thrill of unboxing, the sound of a notification, the limited time only sale. Those aren't random marketing tricks. They're cues designed to make your brain light up before you even have the thing. By the time you get it, the dopamine has already faded, and you're left empty. So you seek the next hit. That's the cycle. Corporations study this biology like scripture. They build their products and ads around it. Fast food chains engineer flavor profiles that activate dopamine loops. The perfect balance of salt, fat, and sugar to keep you hooked. Tech companies use sleek packaging, rhythmic vibrations, and reward sounds to make their devices feel alive. Streaming platforms drop entire seasons at once because they know your brain craves the endless. Next episode. Every touchpoint is designed to reinforce the same loop: want, consume, repeat. The addiction doesn't even have to be chemical. It can be emotional. When a brand convinces you it represents your identity, your taste, your values, your tribe, the product becomes part of your self-image. You're not just buying sneakers, you're buying belonging. You're not just buying coffee, you're buying a ritual. Once a brand taps into that emotional territory, quitting feels like losing a piece of yourself. That's when the addiction becomes complete, and the system rewards it. Think about loyalty programs, points, badges, and exclusive offers. They turn consumption into a game, a series of micro rewards that keep you coming back. You don't even need to love the product anymore. You just love the feeling of earning. Every purchase becomes another hit of dopamine disguised as progress. It's not satisfaction you're chasing, it's stimulation. What makes this so dangerous is how normalized it's become. You're surrounded by slogans that sound empowering, but are really commands: just do it. Treat yourself, because you're worth it. These aren't messages of self-love. They're psychological triggers. They whisper that fulfillment is one purchase away, and when you don't feel fulfilled, the blame falls on you, not the system. So you buy again, hoping this time it'll fill the void it created. And it doesn't stop at material goods. Social media, video games, even online shopping platforms operate like slot machines. You scroll, you search, you click, and once in a while, you find that perfect thing. That moment of yes sends a dopamine surge that teaches your brain to keep trying. You become a lab rat pressing the lever, not for food, but for stimulation. The loop deepens until consumption feels like relief from the discomfort that consumption itself caused. Here's the twisted brilliance of it. Consumer addiction doesn't need to be forced. It thrives on freedom. The illusion that you chose this. You chose the brand, the flavor, the color, the convenience. You're in control, or so you think. But when every choice was designed to exploit the same neurological weakness, choice becomes the illusion, and craving becomes the control mechanism. Even withdrawal has been monetized. When people start feeling burned out from overstimulation, corporations sell them detox teas, minimalist journals, digital sabbaticals. The system profits from both your indulgence and your guilt. It gives you the disease and then sells you the cure. That's not a marketplace. That's a behavioral loop monetized at scale. Breaking out of this loop isn't about boycotting every brand or living off the grid. It's about awareness, about noticing that urge before it becomes action. Ask yourself, who benefits from my craving? What feeling am I trying to buy? Because when you pause long enough to answer, the spell weakens. The dopamine rush loses its grip. The law of consumer addiction runs the modern world. It keeps economies growing, industries alive, and people perpetually chasing satisfaction that never stays. But the truth hiding underneath all that noise is simple. The system doesn't want you fulfilled. It wants you almost fulfilled. Just enough to keep coming back. The moment you realize that, you take the first real step toward freedom. Because once you stop letting your brain be hacked for profit, consumption turns back into choice. And that's when the addiction loses its power. The law of financial enslavement. It doesn't start with a chain. It starts with a promise. Convenience, access, opportunity. A credit card to build your score. A subscription to make life simpler. A student loan to secure your future. But slowly, quietly, the promise turns into a leash. That's the law of financial enslavement, the invisible system of long-term debt and subscription traps that keeps people working, paying, and obeying long after the purchase is forgotten. Money used to represent freedom, a way to trade effort for independence. Now it represents control. Corporations discovered that owning your attention wasn't enough. To keep you permanently dependent, they had to own your future. Debt became the tool, a perfectly legal, socially accepted form of lifelong servitude. It starts with the illusion of affordability. You can't afford the full price. Buy now, pay later. 0 interest for the first 12 months. Own it today for just a small monthly payment. Every line of that marketing script is engineered to bypass resistance, because when you divide cost into pieces, the pain disappears. You're not thinking about the total anymore. You're thinking about the minimum. The system doesn't want you to calculate. It wants you to comply. The brain reacts differently to immediate loss than to delayed loss. Psychologists call it temporal discounting, the tendency to undervalue future consequences. Corporations weaponize this flaw. They stretch payments, hide fees, and wrap long-term obligations in the language of empowerment. Invest in yourself. Secure your lifestyle. Access without limits. You don't realize that what you're buying isn't the product. It's permission to keep paying. Debt isn't just financial. It's psychological. Once you owe, your choices shrink. You take jobs you hate, keep subscriptions you don't use, buy things to justify the spending that got you there. You become risk-averse because debt punishes risk. The system doesn't need to control your thoughts when it controls your bills. You obey the structure because survival depends on it. Credit cards are the perfect example. They were sold as tools for freedom. Travel anywhere, buy anything, earn rewards. But every swipe is a contract. The interest compounds faster than logic. The rewards you earn barely scratch the surface of what you owe. You end up trading peace of mind for points that expire. The freedom they promised turns into a treadmill of repayments. You keep running, but the balance never drops. And then there are subscriptions, the modern evolution of financial control. Once, you bought things outright. Now, you rent them forever. Music, movies, software, fitness, even basic utilities. Everything is a recurring fee. You no longer own your tools or your media. You lease access from corporations that can revoke it at any time. The set it and forget it model sounds convenient, but that's the point. Forgetfulness is profitable. Every unused subscription, every autopay renewal, is quiet revenue built on your inattention. The subscription model conditions dependence. You start to feel like you need these services to function. You can't cancel them because your workflow, your entertainment, even your sense of identity are tied to them. The system has converted ownership into obligation. You no longer buy to possess, you buy to maintain. It's not commerce anymore. It's digital feudalism, and the worst part, they make you feel grateful for it. Financial enslavement is packaged as opportunity. Student loans are. Investments in your future. Car leases are. Flexible upgrades. Streaming bundles are. Personalized freedom. Each one reinforces the same message: access equals success. But access without ownership is dependency. And dependency is control. When you're in debt, your time isn't yours. Every future paycheck already belongs to someone else. You're not working to live, you're working to pay. The system has turned human effort into collateral. As long as the debt remains, obedience remains. Because rebellion requires security, And security vanishes when you owe. Governments play their part too. They promote borrowing as economic growth. They tell you credit is trust, that good citizens pay on time. But behind that rhetoric lies a deeper truth. Debt keeps populations predictable. A society drowning in payments doesn't revolt, it budgets. It doesn't demand change, it demands extensions. Financial pressure becomes social order. The law of financial enslavement isn't about greed. It's about structure. It's a system designed to make you feel in control while slowly removing control, a lifetime of small payments that add up to a quiet kind of captivity. The average person today doesn't need bars. They need Wi-Fi, interest rates, and renewal reminders. That's the modern cage. But here's the paradox: the system only works if you don't look directly at it. The moment you start seeing every contract as a claim on your future, the illusion cracks. Awareness creates friction. Friction disrupts obedience. When you start asking, do I need this? Or was I told I need this? The chains start to loosen. Financial freedom doesn't begin with earning more. It begins with wanting less. It's not about cutting everything out. It's about reclaiming the power to choose what's worth paying for. Because when you stop feeding the machine with blind payments, the system loses its leverage. And that's when the numbers on the screen stop owning you, and you start owning yourself again. The law of algorithmic bias. Have you ever noticed how your online world feels perfectly tailored to you? The videos that match your humor, the news that fits your beliefs, the ads that seem to know exactly what you want before you do. It feels personal, efficient, even comforting. But that comfort hides control. That's the law of algorithmic bias, the invisible influence that shapes your worldview, your opportunities, and even your sense of truth. Algorithms are supposed to be neutral, cold, mathematical, objective, but they aren't. They're designed by humans, trained on human data, and optimized for corporate goals. Every line of code carries assumptions about what matters, what sells, what should be seen. The result is not a mirror of the world. It's a distortion of it, fine-tuned to keep you clicking, buying, and believing. Here's how it works. Algorithms feed on data. Everything you like, ignore, search, watch, or scroll past. They build a psychological profile so precise it can predict not just what you'll consume, but what you'll believe. Then they filter your reality accordingly. If you lean toward a certain ideology, they show you more of it. If you react strongly to outrage, they flood you with controversy. The system isn't trying to inform you. It's trying to engage you. And engagement doesn't care about truth. It only cares about intensity. Over time, this creates what psychologists call a reinforcement loop. You see what aligns with you, you click, the algorithm learns, and it doubles down. Soon, your entire digital environment agrees with you. You stop seeing the full spectrum of perspectives, not because someone censored them, but because the algorithm decided they wouldn't hold your attention. And the scary part, you don't notice the narrowing. It feels natural, logical, even empowering, because the world around you seems to confirm what you already think. That's the invisible trap. When your feed becomes your filter, your worldview stops being yours. You think you're informed, but you're being curated. Every scroll, every autoplay, every recommendation quietly edits your mental landscape. The algorithm becomes the editor of your reality, and you never signed off on the script. This bias isn't always malicious. It's mathematical. If outrage keeps you online longer, the algorithm will feed you outrage. If fear drives clicks, it will feed you fear. If beauty sells, it will prioritize faces that match the cultural ideal. And if history taught us anything, it's that systems designed for profit rarely align with systems designed for fairness. Take opportunity, for example. Job platforms use algorithms to match candidates with employers, but studies have shown those systems often replicate human prejudice. If past hiring data favored certain demographics, the algorithm learns that pattern and repeats it, not out of hate, but out of habit. The result: some people never see certain listings, never get certain offers, never even realize what they've been excluded from. The bias is invisible, but the consequences are not. The same happens with financial systems. Credit scores, loan approvals, insurance rates, all filtered through algorithms that weigh your worth based on patterns you can't see or challenge. You're not judged by who you are, but by the digital shadow you leave behind. And because the system is automated, no one takes responsibility. The bias hides behind math, wearing the mask of objectivity. Corporations love that invisibility. It protects them. The algorithm decided becomes the perfect defense. You can't argue with a formula you don't understand. And that's the genius of algorithmic bias. It doesn't tell you what to think. It just decides what you'll see and trusts that your mind will do the rest. And the deeper danger: algorithms don't just reflect your beliefs. They sculpt them. They shape what you fear, who you trust, who you empathize with. They decide which stories are normal and which are fringe. They control the emotional tone of your day without ever saying a word. Over time, your digital reflection becomes your identity, and your identity becomes predictable, which makes you easier to sell to, easier to manipulate, easier to control. You might think you're immune, that you can see through it. But bias works best when it doesn't feel like bias. It feels like clarity. It feels like truth. The moment you say, "My feed is just showing me what's real," the law has already done its job. Breaking free from it doesn't mean abandoning technology. It means questioning the frame. When you see a headline that feels too perfect, ask why it was shown to you. When you're recommended a product or a person, ask who benefits from that match. Awareness interrupts the automation, and awareness is the only form of freedom that algorithms can't optimize for. The law of algorithmic bias runs silently beneath the surface of modern life. It doesn't need to censor you. It just needs to guide you gently enough that you never notice the steering. The danger isn't that machines are learning to think like humans. It's that humans are learning to think like machines. Predictable, polarized, programmable. Once you see that, the feed changes. It stops feeling like a window and starts looking like a mirror. One that reflects not the world as it is, but the world someone decided you should see. The law of cultural engineering: culture doesn't change by accident. It's designed, tested, and deployed, piece by piece, generation by generation, until what once felt unnatural becomes normal, and what once felt wrong becomes desirable. That's the law of cultural engineering, the deliberate shaping of societal values to align with profit motives. It's not about selling products anymore. It's about selling the worldview that makes those products inevitable. The brilliance of this system is how quietly it works. You don't wake up one day and realize your values were rewritten. It happens through repetition, in ads, entertainment, education, even language. A phrase here, a slogan there, a storyline that gets repeated across every medium until it feels like truth. Culture is the operating system of the human mind, and corporations learned how to program it. Look back far enough and you'll see it clearly. There was a time when people bought things to use them. Now, they buy to become them. That shift didn't just happen, it was engineered. In the mid-1900s, advertisers realized that appealing to logic wasn't enough. They needed to appeal to identity, so they started attaching emotion, aspiration, and morality to consumption. Cars became freedom. Perfume became confidence. Fast food became family. Corporations stopped selling products and started selling meanings. And culture began to orbit the marketplace. Once profit became the lens through which culture evolved, everything that couldn't be monetized started to lose value. Community became networking. Art became content. Nature became a backdrop. Even rest became a productivity strategy. The system redefined human experience into market categories. You weren't just a person anymore. You were a consumer segment, a data point, a demographic trend. And it worked, because culture is contagious. When enough people start repeating a behavior, it stops looking like marketing and starts looking like reality. That's how trends become norms, and norms become beliefs. For example, the idea that success equals constant growth. That's not human nature. That's corporate philosophy turned into collective identity. Or the idea that happiness requires buying something. That's a marketing principle disguised as a life goal. Modern cultural engineering doesn't use propaganda in the old-fashioned sense. It uses aesthetics, influencers, and stories that make control feel organic. When a brand supports a cause, it's not just being moral. It's calibrating its message to match the emotional tone of the moment. It wants to stand for something, because standing for something sells better than standing for profit. Even rebellion has been monetized. Counterculture is no longer a threat, it's a niche market. The system learned that the easiest way to neutralize resistance is to sell it back to you as fashion. Think about how values shift over time. Decades ago, modesty, patience, and craftsmanship were virtues. Now it's speed, visibility, and virality. The faster something spreads, the more valuable it is. Not because it's true, but because it's profitable. This isn't evolution, it's design. Corporations invest billions in psychology, sociology, and media strategy to understand what emotions drive behavior. Then they amplify the ones that sell: urgency, envy, pride, fear, until they define the cultural climate itself. It's not just what you buy, it's what you believe about the world that determines what you'll buy next. That's why entertainment matters so much. Films, music, and shows don't just reflect society. They manufacture its emotional palette. They teach you who to admire, who to fear, what to crave, what to avoid. And behind every irrelatable story, there's usually a network of sponsors and investors shaping what can and cannot be said. The culture you consume is rarely culture by the people. It's culture by the shareholders. But the most powerful part of cultural engineering isn't what it promotes, it's what it erases. The more your attention is directed toward consumer-driven values, the less space you have for deeper ones. Reflection, slowness, self-reliance. These are bad for business, so they fade from the collective vocabulary. In their place, we get hustle, grind, lifestyle, brand. The words change, and with them, the worldview. None of this feels like manipulation because culture doesn't tell you what to think. It teaches you how to think. It sets the boundaries of what's acceptable, desirable, or even possible. That's how control becomes sustainable. You don't need to force obedience when people's values are already aligned with the system's needs. They'll police themselves to stay within the cultural script. But awareness breaks the spell when you start noticing how every trend, every movement, every moral panic somehow leads back to consumption. You begin to see the architecture underneath. You realize that culture isn't neutral. It's curated. And once you see the curation, the illusion loses its power. The law of cultural engineering is the quietest form of control because it doesn't fight the human spirit. It rewrites it. It tells you who you are and what matters before you ever get the chance to decide for yourself. But once you reclaim that decision, once you define your values outside the marketplace, you become unprogrammable. And that's the one thing the system can't monetize, a mind that thinks beyond the script it was given. The law of compliance culture, it starts with something that sounds harmless: company policy, best practices, community guidelines, simple, reasonable phrases. But beneath them lies one of the most powerful control systems ever created. That's the law of compliance culture. The quiet conditioning that trains both employees and consumers to self-police, to enforce obedience without needing anyone to watch. At first, it feels like order. A company tells its workers to follow procedure. A platform reminds its users to adhere to standards. You think it's about safety, quality, or ethics. And sometimes it is. But over time, those rules evolve into something else. A psychological framework that rewards conformity and punishes deviation, not through punishment, but through belonging. Compliance culture works because it doesn't need enforcers, it builds them. It rewires people to regulate themselves, to equate obedience with professionalism, to treat silence as virtue, to fear stepping out of line more than being wrong. It's control disguised as teamwork. You don't question authority because authority now feels moral. You don't challenge norms because norms feel natural. Inside corporations, this law begins with structure. Every policy, form, and performance metric carries an unspoken lesson. Don't think, comply. Employees are told to follow the process. Instead of solving problems creatively, they're trained to measure success not by impact, but by adherence. And slowly, curiosity fades. People stop asking why and start asking how fast. Fear seals the deal. Not the loud, obvious kind, the quiet fear of standing out, the fear of being labeled difficult, negative, or uncooperative. The fear of losing access to comfort, reputation, or livelihood. That fear keeps people in line more effectively than punishment ever could. Because in compliance culture, rebellion doesn't get punished immediately. It gets isolated. You're not fired for disobedience. You're excluded for non-alignment. Outside the workplace, the same dynamic exists for consumers. Terms of service, privacy policies, content guidelines, walls of text no one reads but everyone accepts. You click, "I agree," without hesitation because resistance feels inconvenient. You've been conditioned to trust that the rules are there for your benefit. That illusion of mutual protection keeps you docile. And when people do break the unspoken rules, notice how quickly others step in to correct them. Employees report each other for policy violations. Users shame one another online for breaking etiquette. Customers attack brands or creators who stray from the script. That's the genius of compliance culture. It externalizes control. The system doesn't need to suppress you. Your peers will do it. You become both the prisoner and the guard. Corporations love this because it's scalable. True power isn't forcing millions of people to obey. It's making them want to obey. You don't have to monitor everyone when the culture itself becomes the monitor. Each person internalizes the company's voice until it sounds like their own. That's why slogans like, "We're a family," or "We value unity," are so effective. They don't build community, they build conformity. Even creativity gets weaponized. The system tells you to think outside the box, but only within approved boundaries. You're encouraged to innovate, as long as your ideas don't threaten structure or profit. That illusion of freedom keeps morale high while ensuring the core power dynamics never change. It's not suppression through force, it's suppression through praise. Online, compliance culture operates through algorithmic reinforcement. When posts that fit the dominant narrative get boosted and controversial ones get buried, users learn the boundaries subconsciously. They start censoring themselves to stay visible. They don't call it censorship, they call it optimization. And just like that, expression becomes performance, authenticity becomes risk, and control becomes culture. The psychological mechanism behind this is operant conditioning. Reward the desired behavior, ignore or punish the rest. When you follow the rules, you're praised, promoted, or liked. When you deviate, you're ignored, shadow banned, or ostracized. The brain adapts fast. It learns what earns safety and approval, and it avoids everything else. Before long, you don't even think about what you'd like to say or do. You think about what's safe to say or do. That's how freedom quietly evaporates. The most dangerous part, compliance starts to feel like virtue. Obedience becomes synonymous with integrity. People start believing they're doing the right thing by enforcing the system's values. They call it accountability, responsibility, or professionalism, never realizing they've become extensions of the very power they think they're upholding. And because the system praises conformity as moral goodness, questioning it feels wrong. You don't rebel because rebellion feels unethical. You don't challenge because you've been trained to equate discomfort with danger. The cage becomes invisible. And even worse, you start decorating it. But here's the truth compliance culture hides. Real integrity isn't obedience, it's discernment. It's the ability to tell when rules serve justice and when they serve control. Systems that fear questions were never built on truth, and a society that rewards silence will always mistake compliance for harmony, right up until the moment it breaks. The law of compliance culture doesn't need chains or threats. It just needs your participation. It thrives on your politeness, your loyalty, your fear of friction. But the second you stop mistaking obedience for goodness, the moment you choose awareness over approval, the loop cracks. Because compliance only works when everyone agrees to stay quiet. The first person who speaks up doesn't just break the rule, they break the spell. The law of subtle servitude, it doesn't start with chains or commands. It starts with praise. You're told you're strong for enduring, wise for obeying, mature for compromising. You're told that playing by the rules is freedom, that accepting your place is power. That's the law of subtle servitude, the art of convincing people that submission equals empowerment. It's control wrapped in self-help language, obedience disguised as confidence. And it works because it doesn't look like control. It looks like choice. You don't think you're surrendering your power. You think you're expressing it. You think you're evolving, being responsible, doing what's best. The genius of this law is that it never forces you to kneel. It just makes kneeling look noble. Corporations mastered this long before governments caught on. They stopped selling domination and started selling identity. You're not just a customer anymore. You're a partner, a member, part of a community. The word "we" is used like a spell. It makes you feel included in something bigger, even when all you're really doing is serving the system that benefits from your loyalty. Think about workplace culture. Employees are told, "We're all in this together." But the moment profit dips, that illusion disappears. You realize that together meant you carry the weight while we make the calls. Yet even then, people defend the company, working unpaid hours, burning out, competing for approval, because they've been taught that devotion equals pride. They call it dedication, but it's submission wearing a smile. This law thrives on emotional manipulation. It reframes compliance as empowerment. When you conform to impossible standards, you're driven. When you tolerate exploitation, you're loyal. When you accept injustice quietly, you're professional. And when you doubt the system, you're told you're negative, ungrateful, or not a team player. The goal isn't to break your will. It's to merge it with theirs. Social media turned this into a cultural epidemic. Platforms tell creators to hustle, to build their brand, to grind harder. It sounds motivational, but underneath, it's servitude. You create for free while they monetize your labor. You chase relevance while they collect data. They convince you that constant effort is empowerment, when in reality, it's dependency. The system doesn't need to oppress you when it can convince you that exhaustion is self-expression. Even in consumer life, the same principle applies. You're told that you deserve it, that buying something is an act of self-love. It sounds empowering, but it's still obedience. Emotional submission to corporate messaging. You're not choosing freely. You're following the path of least resistance that the system built for you, dressed up in the language of autonomy. The psychology behind this is simple but devastating. Humans crave agency. We want to feel in control. So the system doesn't take control from you. It hands you a counterfeit version. You get endless micro choices that don't change the structure at all. What color phone do you want? Which version of the same subscription? What career path inside the same corporate hierarchy? The illusion of choice replaces the reality of freedom, and you feel powerful, right up until you notice the walls haven't moved. This law also thrives in moral language. Submission is repackaged as virtue. You're told that humility means not questioning, that patience means tolerating injustice, that discipline means obeying authority. And because those words appeal to the conscience, people enforce them on each other. You start measuring worth by how well you endure, not by how deeply you think. That's not empowerment, that's programming. Subtle servitude is also gendered, classed, and cultural. Different groups are told different stories about what empowerment looks like, but all of them end the same way: obedience through identity. The poor are told to work harder. Women are told to balance everything. Men are told to be strong and never complain. The goal is to keep everyone chasing virtue within their assigned role, never questioning who wrote the rules in the first place. The brilliance of this system is that it uses language as a leash. Every time you repeat phrases like, "trust the process," "stay in your lane," or "it is what it is," you're reaffirming the hierarchy. You're convincing yourself that surrender is wisdom. And once enough people do that, you don't need control. The culture polices itself. People start competing not for freedom, but for the title of most obedient. But here's the truth hidden under all that motivational noise: real empowerment doesn't come from surrender, it comes from sovereignty. It's not the ability to comply gracefully, it's the ability to choose consciously. Empowerment means questioning the systems that benefit from your cooperation. It means saying no without guilt and yes without coercion. The law of subtle servitude feeds on confusion between peace and passivity. It wants you to mistake calm for consent, compliance for strength, exhaustion for purpose. It thrives when people perform resilience instead of demanding change. And it dies the moment someone says, "Wait, who actually benefits from my endurance?" Because once you ask that question, the illusion collapses. You see how the same system that praises your strength profits from your silence. You realize that obedience dressed as empowerment is still obedience. And when you stop needing their approval to feel powerful, that's when the leash snaps. The system doesn't fear rebellion, it fears clarity. Because clarity is contagious. One clear mind breaks 1,000 silent agreements. And once that happens, subtle servitude loses its disguise, and submission finally looks like what it always was: control repackaged as virtue. The law of gamification, it starts with a sound, a ping, a flash, a tiny rush in your brain that feels like reward. You don't even think about it, but your body reacts. That's dopamine, and that's the law of gamification, the art of turning manipulation into something that feels fun, voluntary, and earned. Gamification takes the mechanics of games, points, badges, streaks, leaderboards, and injects them into everyday life. But the purpose isn't to entertain, it's to control, to keep you checking, clicking, scrolling, buying, all while believing you're in charge. The trick is that you enjoy it. Control that feels good doesn't need force, it just needs engagement. Every big platform runs on this law. Your fitness app celebrates your progress. Your credit card app rewards your loyalty. Your workplace tracks your performance. But behind all those smiles and confetti animations is data. A record of what motivates you, what frustrates you, and what keeps you chasing the next digital pat on the head. The psychology is ancient. It's called variable reward conditioning, the same principle that keeps gamblers glued to slot machines. You don't get a reward every time. You get it sometimes. And that sometimes is enough to keep you hooked. The unpredictability lights up your brain like a drug. Social media works the same way. You scroll, hoping for that next hit of validation, the like, the comment, the notification. It feels like freedom, but it's just chemistry on a leash. Gamification thrives because it turns effort into entertainment. You're not spending time, you're leveling up. You're not working more, you're achieving. The system blurs the line between voluntary and involuntary action until you forget the difference. You think you're playing, but the game is playing you. Even self-improvement has been gamified. Habit apps, streak trackers, progress bars, all designed to keep you motivated. But real growth isn't supposed to feel like chasing points. It's supposed to be messy, uneven, human. The moment you tie your self-worth to a metric, you hand control over to the system that defines that metric. Miss a day, and the app doesn't just reset your streak. It resets your confidence. That's not motivation. That's emotional dependency. The danger isn't that it's addictive, it's that it feels harmless. People defend these systems because they think they're just fun or productive. But gamification isn't about helping you win. It's about making sure you keep playing. Every reward, every badge, every notification is designed to pull you back in. You're not the player. You're the product that performs. And it doesn't stop at apps. Governments and corporations now use gamified systems to drive compliance. Social credit programs, workplace rankings, citizen reward initiatives, all built on the same loop. Do what's expected, get a point. Step out of line, lose one. Obedience disguised as progress. The brilliance of gamification is that it removes resistance. You don't rebel against what feels enjoyable. You don't see manipulation when it's covered in bright colors and applause. But the cost of constant stimulation is silence. The inability to sit still without being scored. You forget how to act without feedback. The law of gamification turns control into entertainment. It rewires your brain to crave the loop that benefits the system, not you. But once you see the pattern, you regain choice. You can still play, just without being played. Because real power isn't in winning the game. It's in knowing when to stop. The law of incremental invasion. You didn't wake up one morning and lose your privacy. It was taken from you slowly, one software update at a time. Not by force, not by threat, but through convenience. That's how the law of incremental invasion works. The erosion doesn't scream, it whispers. Each new feature looks harmless, even helpful. A tiny pop-up, a friendly message. We've made improvements to serve you better. But every improvement takes something you'll never fully get back. At first, it's optional. A new permission here, a location request there. You tap allow because it seems reasonable. Then another app asks, then another, until yes becomes automatic. What once felt intrusive now feels routine. You didn't agree to total surveillance. You just agreed to stay updated. That's the genius of incremental invasion. It hides control inside progress. The changes come slow enough that outrage never builds. Each step feels too small to fight. But together, those steps form a staircase leading straight to a place where privacy doesn't exist. The psychology behind this is the boiling frog effect. If you drop a frog into boiling water, it jumps out. But if you warm the water slowly, it stays until it dies. Humans react the same way. When the loss of privacy happens gradually, comfort overrides caution. We adapt faster than we resist. Tech companies depend on that adaptation. They learned that if they frame surveillance as personalization, you'll welcome it. If they call tracking optimization, you'll trust it. The more your devices learn about you, the more they convince you it's for your benefit. You're not being monitored, you're being understood. And because it's packaged as choice, it doesn't feel like control. You install the smart speaker because it's helpful. You link your health data because it's convenient. You share your location because it makes life easier. Every tap feels voluntary, but the system only ever moves in one direction. More data, less privacy. Notice the pattern. Version 1 of an app asks for your name. Version 2 wants your contacts. Version 3 starts tracking your behavior. By version 6, it has your voice, your face, your habits, even your sleep patterns. You didn't resist because the changes never looked threatening. They looked like progress. Even governments have learned from this model. Every new law framed as security quietly expands surveillance powers. Each new camera installed for public safety stays forever. The justification always sounds temporary, but control never rolls back once granted. Incremental invasion doesn't retreat. It only pauses until the next crisis. And the scariest part, it works because people stop noticing. We trade privacy for convenience until the trade no longer feels like a choice. We start saying things like, "I have nothing to hide," forgetting that privacy isn't about hiding. It's about autonomy. Once they can predict your behavior, they can guide it. And once they guide it, they don't need to control you. You'll control yourself. This is the modern con. You think you're updating your device, but the device is updating you. Every new feature subtly reshapes how you behave, what you allow, and what you consider normal. You're being trained to live transparently in a system that hides everything from you. The law of incremental invasion doesn't conquer. It erodes. Not through fear, but through familiarity. And by the time you realize how much ground you've lost, it's already gone. The only way to stop it isn't with outrage. It's with awareness. Because every update asks a question, even if it doesn't say it out loud. How much of yourself are you willing to trade for convenience? And if you stop to think before you click accept, even once, the erosion slows. Because privacy doesn't vanish all at once. It slips away in tiny, silent pieces, handed over voluntarily, one update at a time. The law of fragmentation. It's easier to control a crowd when the crowd forgets it's one. That's the law of fragmentation. The quiet art of dividing people just enough that they can't push back together. No violence, no visible force. Just subtle separations, by belief, by identity, by lifestyle, until unity feels impossible and isolation feels natural. The system doesn't need to destroy communities. It just needs to keep them distracted, keep them arguing, keep them certain that their neighbor is the problem. Divide, scatter, and conquer, not with armies, but with algorithms. Fragmentation works because it hijacks one of the oldest instincts in human psychology, the need to belong. Humans will do almost anything to protect their group, even if that loyalty is weaponized against them. Corporations, media networks, and political machines all understand this. They feed people identities like products. Choose your team, pick your side, wear your label. Once you do, they own you. Not through control, through emotion. You see it everywhere now. Politics isn't about policy, it's about tribes. Brands don't just sell products, they sell worldviews. Platforms don't connect people, they sort them. Every click, every share, every outrage reinforces your position inside a digital camp. A cluster of people who think like you, speak like you, rage like you. It feels empowering, but it's engineered. Because when you're locked into a group, the system can predict you, provoke you, and profit from you. The real genius of fragmentation is that it doesn't destroy unity by accident. It monetizes it. Outrage drives engagement. Engagement drives data. Data drives power. Every argument online generates more profit for the platforms that host it. They don't care who wins. They just need the fight to never end. The more divided people become, the easier they are to steer. Each group gets its own tailored reality, its own version of truth. Algorithms don't just show you information. They filter it to confirm your worldview. That's called confirmation bias amplification, and it's devastatingly effective. The more validated you feel, the less likely you are to question. And the less you question, the easier it is to manipulate you. Fragmentation also neutralizes resistance. When everyone is busy defending their identity, no one defends their freedom. Workers argue about politics instead of wages. Consumers argue about morality instead of exploitation. Activists argue about purity instead of progress. The system doesn't have to silence anyone. It just needs them talking past each other. Even rebellion gets divided. The system creates micro-revolutions, small, emotional causes that never threaten the structure as a whole. You feel like you're fighting, but you're only fighting within boundaries the system designed. It's controlled chaos disguised as activism. The psychology behind it is simple but brutal. Humans experience what's called in-group bias, the instinct to trust those who resemble us and distrust those who don't. Corporations amplify that bias through design. Targeted marketing ensures each demographic sees the version of the world most flattering to its ego. And because everyone's feed looks different, collective understanding collapses. We don't share a reality anymore. We share illusions customized for comfort. This is the quiet weapon of modern power, isolation through personalization. The more customized your experience feels, the more fragmented society becomes. The walls aren't physical, they're emotional and informational. Each person trapped inside a perfectly curated echo chamber that feels like truth. And once fragmentation takes hold, people stop organizing. They start performing. They start competing for moral superiority instead of collective strength. Division becomes identity. Conflict becomes currency. And the system keeps winning because no one remembers they were supposed to fight it. The law of fragmentation doesn't destroy solidarity in one blow. It erodes it conversation by conversation, post by post, until unity feels outdated, even dangerous. And the greatest trick it ever pulled was making division feel righteous. But here's the truth. Power only fears one thing: people remembering they're on the same side. The second individuals stop fighting each other and start questioning who benefits from their division, the illusion cracks. Because fragmentation can only control isolated minds, connection, awareness, and empathy. Those are the viruses the system can't contain. The law of fragmentation thrives in separation, but it dies the moment we remember that no algorithm, no brand, no ideology can survive when humanity starts thinking together. The law of corporate morality theater. You've seen it. The heartfelt commercial, the rainbow logo, the tearful CEO speech about change. It looks sincere, it sounds compassionate, and it feels like progress. But that's the performance. That's the law of corporate morality theater, using social causes to mask control and exploitation. It's one of the most effective manipulations of the modern age, because it doesn't silence outrage, it absorbs it. The system learned that fighting morality is bad for business, so it decided to sell morality instead. Corporations no longer just sell products, they sell virtue. They wrap exploitation in empathy, greed in compassion, and profit in purpose. And it works, because people want to believe they're supporting something good. You're not just buying shoes. You're supporting equality. You're not signing up for a service. You're empowering connection. You're not giving your data away. You're building community. Every major brand now has a cause, a movement, a mission. They speak the language of activism while operating on the logic of extraction. They preach diversity while outsourcing labor to underpaid workers. They promote mental health while building platforms that fuel anxiety. They claim sustainability while producing endless cycles of waste. It's not hypocrisy, it's strategy. Because morality sells better than honesty. This theater works because it gives people emotional permission to participate in systems they'd otherwise resist. It turns guilt into comfort. You're not consuming, you're contributing. You're not being manipulated, you're making a difference. The logo becomes a moral shield, a way to feel righteous while feeding the same machine you thought you were challenging. Behind the curtain, it's all numbers. When outrage trends, the boardroom listens, not to understand, but to calculate. They ask one question: how do we turn this emotion into engagement? If people are angry, sell them a product that feels like protest. If people are grieving, give them a brand to rally around. The illusion of shared values keeps consumers emotionally attached and distracted from the exploitation underneath. It's called virtue signaling capitalism. Instead of denying corruption, it rebrands itself as compassion. And because people crave moral belonging, they join in. They repost campaigns, buy ethical products, share corporate hashtags, unaware they're amplifying the same machinery that created the problem. Social media made this performance global. Every platform thrives on emotional currency. When companies post a black square, a solidarity video, or a heartfelt tweet, they're not leading a movement. They're following the algorithm. Outrage equals reach, and reach equals revenue. The more emotional the issue, the more profitable the performance. Even internal culture gets staged. Companies preach inclusion while silencing dissent. They talk about psychological safety while monitoring every word employees say online. They encourage open dialogue, as long as the dialogue doesn't question power. The morality is skin-deep, engineered for optics, not ethics. This law manipulates one of humanity's best instincts, the desire to do good. It doesn't destroy that instinct, it harvests it. It convinces people that morality can be consumed, that justice can be purchased, that activism is just another brand identity. When ethics become marketing, exploitation no longer hides, it performs. The brilliance of corporate morality theater is that it neutralizes real resistance. People stop organizing because they believe progress is already happening. They stop questioning because they feel represented. They see their values reflected in ads and assume the fight is being fought. The system doesn't suppress rebellion, it sponsors it. But the difference between performance and principle is sacrifice. Real morality costs something. It risks profit, comfort, reputation. Corporate morality never does. It always finds a way to sound righteous without losing control. The danger isn't that people believe these companies care. It's that they stop believing change can exist outside them. That's how power sustains itself, by turning conscience into commerce. The law of corporate morality theater doesn't just sell products, it sells forgiveness. It gives exploitation a halo, control a conscience, and greed a human face. But once you look past the slogans and the glossy campaigns, the truth is simple. Morality that turns a profit isn't morality at all. It's marketing dressed as virtue, and applause is the only currency it needs.